Recording is on.
Good morning, everybody. It's November the 28th, Sunday, and the Eastern Extinctionati meeting. So let's get the show on the road with a little agenda I put together. Hi, Petra. So, yeah, has anybody got stuff they want to talk about today? Because the things that I put down was about the sigil, about doing the Extinctionati manifesto, and one other thing. Oh, yeah, about the bug. The bug. I just wanted to say something about the bug because it made me a little nervous. I just wanted to share my feelings, my instincts about the bug. Maybe we should go first. Does anybody want to talk about anything else, or does anybody not want to talk about that?
Oh, no, it sounds like you've got a few things in mind. Maybe we'll talk about that first.
Yeah, so I mean, all along I just had this something just not that right with this situation, which you know what I'm talking about, and this okay, so and it just like kind of got to the point where I just had to voice it because this thing, the G variant from South Africa, is just it's just not right. I mean the what I mean in particular is the WHO on Friday they didn't ban flights or travel and stuff from South Africa. It's just unthinkable. I just can't. There's no excuse. I mean, there was an excuse for Wuhan and being slow to ban travel. You can always say, oh, you know, they don't because Xi has infiltrated the WHO terribly, and you know, you can say economic reasons, but there is no reason from a what Trump would call a shithole country from Africa. It's like I mean, they've done it all the time with Ebola, anything else. They stop the flight as soon as they know the problem. The African governments try and hide the previous problems with things like Ebola, but they, I just can't shake this feeling from my spidey senses that this just things are just they just don't add up. I'm just so damn suspicious. I mean, I can't see why these guys would go to such a lot of trouble to try and force, these jabs when they know they don't work. They know that it's not stopping the spread. It's not doing anything. And yet they almost get to the point of civil war to try and make people have it. And then, this this new variant, it looks scary. And then, they just do nothing. And it's like, what? It's just, I don't know. What do people think about it?
Well, I mean, it's at the stage where you tend to think everything about it. The line of thought can go off in so many different directions.
I've been thinking about it. Yesterday I had a surprise meeting with loads of people from around here, from the community, who don't want to get vaccinated. And they had
don't use the B words. Don't use the B words.
Yeah. Well, we had a secret kind of meeting in a venue, and some of them are actually, but they just got this, and we were talking about that yesterday too, and like it as you say, doesn't add up. The timing, the flights, the type of of bug, and I've read a few things on it, and then I was waiting for that meeting yesterday. I had the time to check what Mr. Kevin was saying, and I put on his last stream, and of course it's nearly impossible to listen to it because he's all scattered. It's going all over the place, you know. But it's mixed with all his rants about everything. Basically, he's just going. I think he's very confusing to listen to. So I don't know, is he confused in his brain too? I don't know. But I was wondering, should we not? I don't know. Shall we have another little chat with him, or even non-recorded? You know, just to see a bit
Yeah,
of
it wouldn't
information,
hurt.
because I think it's the information on the nature of these bugs doesn't add up
Yeah,
either. It's a different. I mean,
yeah,
I understand very little about genomes and some stuff like that. The basic that I had in my medical training. I'm not a specialist in, and I've tried to read some articles like that, and I've seen, but that looks a bit that one looks a little bit bizarre, and they're announcing already that that it's not going to that the jab is not going to cover for that. It's yeah. I don't know.
uh,
There's so many questions.
yeah. I mean, I don't know anything about virology, but I just know how to read bullshit, and so I have a good bullshit detector, and especially when it comes to expert bullshitters, I'm very good at ferreting them out. So, but yeah, I posted something which I think what I expect, not being a virologist, is that it's a chimera. It's something that I was kind of worried about for a long time, and that's that it's a chimera. So that the virus at some stage is going to cause the go chimeric sometime because it mutates like crazy, and so then RNA things like HIV are very good candidates for especially in Africa. Africa is riddled with HIV, and so think that's a bit of a nightmare. I think. I mean, I can't think. Yeah, if you have 23, what was it? 23 variations. That's too much for
Um,
single nucleotide
32.
polymorph. 32. Yeah, that's too
Mm.
much for single nucleotide polymorphisms. That's just like one coding error at a time. That's like 32 coding errors. It's just not
Yeah, all at
possible with
once, just like, yeah,
fabric. Yeah, so and the best possible, I mean, the most obvious hybrid is HIV because HIV people are immunocompromised, so they're likely to get it. I don't believe the statistics coming out of Africa. They say, "Oh, Africa hasn't got." Come on, you just don't know Africa. Africa's got to be riddled with it. There's no way that Africa with dense populations and travel and that it's and also there's a lot of statistics that it goes for black people more.
Well, I
So
agree. I agree with what you're saying on the fact that it's probably not generating from there, but I'm also remembering early in the pre jab campaign that there was this guy, this Flemish guy, Gert something, who was talking
Van den
about the
Bosch.
the
Yeah,
dangers of a campaign in the middle of an epidemic, which would increase the possibility of mutations, that makes total sense. It's just, it's just, we all know that before, and I know those products are a little bit different from traditional jabs, but still, I think he made a point that stayed with me, and I think that is a very, now I've looked at the rate of of, of jabs in Africa compared to other parts of the world, and it's much more likely that the emergence of a mutation would happen in another part where there would be an awful lot of people who had been jabbed, and South Africa is one of the countries where it's actually higher. It's the highest in Africa. It's not very high, but it's highest in Africa because the general rate in Africa is about 6%, and I think in South Africa it's about 25 or 30. So it's just anyway, that guy, that the few talks he made, and made a lot of sense and were very accessible to the general public. They were not too difficult to understand. And yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing this the effect of this campaign now. We're going to see a little little friend who's going to try to create. I don't know. You're seeing a chimera, but yeah, but that's
No, yeah,
naturally
I thought,
occurring. You mean a
yeah, no,
naturally?
I think Africa's only like 2 or 3%
Yeah, in
jabs.
general,
So
but there
I
are some
think that,
places. There's some places that have got more. Some places, some cities, and particularly South Africa. Oh, Africa is very low. I think it's 6%, but I'm not sure. I could double check that.
yeah,
But
but
there are some
well,
pockets.
I wouldn't think it's the V word driving it. I wouldn't think it was that, because the I just, I think that's probably something that happens in the Western world and stuff. So yeah, no, and also it couldn't, I think it would be driven slowly by a variant at a time, not 32 novelties is too much. It's to me, it must be a variant. I mean, it must be a genera, must be a hybrid of a couple of them. But the thing I'll tell you, I mean, I'm not against. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not against vaccinations per se. I mean, my kids all got the measles, mumps, and rubella stuff, and it's this is is something different. It's not something that might give you autism or something. I'll tell you one of the under special circumstances I wouldn't recommend taking these things, with the caveat that you might have to face the actual disease, and then you might be sorry you listened to me. But I'll tell you where my prejudices are coming from, and that's because it's South Africa. So if you just Google Project Coast, and it's like that's where it all comes from. I mean, I'm sure about enough about the stuff that I mentioned it in a few videos, but if you mention anything about the origins of HIV, automatic dismissal, laughed out the room, conspiracy theory. But I want to share what my feelings to you, because when I was in the Air Force, the bar talk was that HIV was AIDS was developed by South Africa in a lab, and distributed in Kinshasa. Now, that Project Coast, I think a lot of people knew. I think maybe everybody knew, but Project Coast, basically, it's called Project Coast because they put basically their test subjects in basically the bodies in the back of C-130s Hercules, and I think they flew from like Pretoria to Easterplaat and then out to the Southern Ocean. C-130's got a big ramp at the back. They put the ramp down and then roll all the bodies out, and nobody hears any more about them. But the bodies that they rolled out, they were not their failures. They were their successes. So a lot of people, we're talking about 200 people from Mavambo and stuff. A lot of guys went out, and it all came out after. This guy Wouter Basson and others. It all came out after the end of apartheid. So it's been established as fact that South Africa was promoting AIDS and deliberately trying to spread it. South Africa's population would be much bigger today, maybe double, if it wasn't for AIDS. So the eugenicists out there. The worrying thing is that Wouter Basson didn't do it alone. He got help from all over the place, particularly from Israel. South Africa built the bomb with Israel. So Israel and South Africa is a joint venture between Israel and South Africa. And the exchange was South Africa gave the enriched uranium and Israel gave the technology. I know this because of, it's come out in the public, but I knew all this because my parents worked at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and so I met some of the guys doing this when I was a kid, and you knew what they were doing. court. So they were all foreigners, particularly Germans and Israelis, and so those basically Israel built its bomb, and the exchange was then South Africa did research into eugenics, population bombs, ethnic bioweapons, because Israel has an ethnic problem with Palestinians, and South Africa has an ethnic problem with expanding black population. So they both shared the same problem, and they both had the same idea for a solution. Here's the worrying bit, is that they had help from all over the place: Belgium, Britain, Portland down, from Fort Detrick, from America. They all those guys that have never been exposed, and Bota Basson will not expose them, they all tripping along happily. So, it's the extent of this kind of thing is vast. The lack of knowledge about it is vast, and it's so dark and so dirty you wouldn't believe it. But but there's always been this worry in me about the current thing and its relation to HIV. I read this paper of this Indian guy who said, this it has features of HIV. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, my antenna go up. I think what it is they're doing bioweapons research in all over the world, and they kind of farm it out to sleazy laboratories like in Wuhan, and then it probably escapes accidentally. But that's my best bet. But I just want to. I mean, as for the origin of HIV story, it's like the origin of HIV. I mean, it's guys. That came out of a lab. I mean, for sure. So what the only question is, what was the intent? Or was it accidental? Or was it? So the story of it is Bill Hamilton. You remember in my videos about Darwinism, I mentioned Bill Hamilton and Hamiltonians. So he's a famous guy, had a lot of input to evolutionary biology, and he believed that the HIV was caused accidentally from the polio, and the polio was tested in Eastern Congo, and they tested it on the livers of bonobos and chimps. So everyone knows that HIV-1 comes from simian immune virus, and the various strains in different chimps, bonobos, monkeys. But it almost definitely came from the program where they developed that polio, because there were I think there are 3 or 4 strains of HIV-1, and they all emerged at the same time in the around 57, late just before 1960, when they developed and tested these on Eastern Congolese. And that's, if you look at the map of where it started, it corresponds to where they did these. But what Hamilton believed was that because they used, I don't think it would happen today, but in those days they would just use, say, the liver of these primates, and then at some stage where they would come across SIV, and then SIV would be in the that they gave everybody. So Hamilton went out to Africa in around 2000, I think, and tried to get samples, and to prove this theory, and samples from wild chimps and bonobos, and to show that those strains were, proximal, I guess. The current theory is the non-conspiracy theory is complete horseshit. It's that some hunter got a cut or something while he's skinning an animal. That's absolute fucking nonsense. You can't they used to say, oh, it was some blood brothers ceremony that Africans did with monkeys or chimps and so on. Look, I'm telling you absolutely unequivocally, there's no fucking blood brothers ceremony between Africans and chimps. It's just, man alive. How come that's not the conspiracy theory and that's the mainstream? It's just like, oh man, talk about upside down world. But anyway, so you cannot get SIV from a monkey you eat. It just doesn't work that way. Even if you get a ulcer on your lip or whatever, it's just bullshit. And the proof of that is that in some tribes, like the pygmy tribes and stuff, they've been eating monkeys with SIV for fucking centuries, and they, the mainstream virologists say no. Well, HIV has been out there forever. It just didn't. It's like nonsense. It never came across in the slave trade. Every other disease in Africa came across. It can be proven very, very easily that it starts at exactly the same time as they were doing these experiments. So, so now the question is now, Bill Hamilton assumed that it was accidental. It was just bad practice, but it's not so plain, because the actual guys won't talk about it. They all cagey as a duck's ass, and that to me is, I never give them the benefit of that. I think that's the smoking gun in this case with China, is that China's behavior says that they think it was a lab leak. So you can be generous, like Bill Hamilton was, and say that, oh, these guys just did it accidentally, but it doesn't pass the smell test. They're all eugenicists, right? So if you have a look at the background of these people in that, it's not savory at all. And so there's always this question: is was HIV deliberately done as a bioweapon? Now, in the Air Force, we took it as read that it was deliberately constructed with South African help. Now, you could say, oh, that's just bar stories and hearsay and stuff. And I'd say, I never heard any of these bar stories and stuff that didn't turn out to be true. So, I just want to paint this picture of, that the mainstream thing is just so at odds with this dark underworld that I know. And I think maybe Kevin knows. It's just, I just want to say, just watch out. Be on your guard. There's something that just smells, it reeks about this whole thing. And at a certain time in like 2020, the guys were waiting for 2020. 2020 was iconic. It was written in from 1972 in the Limits to Growth. They said, all the predictions was shit breaks out in 2020. And then this comes, it's like, guys, I just can't, I just wanted to express that because I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't share all of this with you. But that's where I'm coming from, is just be very, very careful about how this unfolds. The problem is, if it has an HIV component, you won't hear about it for years. It'll come out as compromised immunity, and compromised immunity means weird types of cancers. So it'll take a long time. If it is some chimera thing, it'll take a long time before they figure it out. This thing doubles at a rate of 2 weeks. So the entire Earth population would be covered in about a year. So at a doubling rate of 2 weeks, you just do the maths. It's exponential growth is extraordinary. And if this has an R value, R naught of about 2, it would basically, most of the world's population would have this before long before they knew the long-term effects. So you shouldn't, well, according to me, and I'm not a virologist, but you shouldn't listen to early reports that come out saying, oh, it's highly infectious, but it's good news because it's not so damaging, and people are not like, oh no, don't believe that. And also, there's no such thing as an HIV jab, right? They've been trying and trying for 40 years. HIV is, think of it like Bruce Lee ninja virus. You will not get a vaccine. It's like trying to catch Bruce Lee with a dog catcher's net. You're not going to do it, man. And so if they rush out something, any kind of vax that has something, oops, I said the word. And if they rush out anything that has the words HIV or the letters HIV or something associated with it, it's like, or anti-HIV in a few months, and that is like, I would never take it. Not I would not while I have my strength. I would never take it because they don't know what they're doing. Absolutely, they don't know what they're doing in that area. HIV is just the a demon from hell, and yeah. So what I'm trying to hint at is a prophylactic against anything with HIV is rushed out could give you the thing that it's trying to avoid, and it would be unintentional, not necessarily intentional. So anyway, I just wanted to lay that out there and warn people for what it's worth. But you don't have to listen to me. Just keep your heads up and just be very, very skeptical. But I think this was going to be big. I think this G thing is the start of the pandemic. I'd say this is the start of the second wave. So we've had just been in the first wave. All the media says, "Oh, fourth wave," and I was like, "That's bullshit." We're in the first wave. If you go back and look at the 1918 virus, we're in the first wave. The second wave of the 1918 virus was the devastating one. And so I think this might be it. And so it's just a hunch, and I just thought I'd share it with you.
Hugh, what do you think there's any chance that even just the variations that have come along since this started were being deliberately seeded? Because as I made in a comment there somewhere, that they always seem to begin somewhere in in an economically depressed country where it would be very easy to just introduce the next version, which could already have been made and sitting on a bookshelf along with the original one, of course. And so we've been through a few different versions, and possibly now, depending on the degree of conspiratorialness, they might be saying, "Oh, well, the population's getting really fed up with this. A lot of resistance, a lot of protesting, and all that. Maybe we should be rolling out something a bit stronger this time."
No,
I don't know.
almost certainly not. Almost certainly not. That's almost certainly not the case. And the reason is that if you look at the mutation rate of SARS, it's unusual for RNA. RNA viruses don't normally mutate very fast, but it mutates very fast for an RNA virus. So, but the mutation rate is consistent with a SARS mutation rate.
Right.
So there can't be anybody frigging with it, because otherwise it would be kind of like double. You'd see double the mutation rate. So my estimate is that it's mutating at the rate you'd expect. There's nobody could be tinkering.
Yeah.
And the reason why it comes up in these places in Africa, everybody's sick. They go around, with 3 or 4 deadly diseases and just go to work and get on with it. And so those countries, they have a lot of people that are immunocompromised, and so that somebody with an immunocompromised body, especially somebody that's undergoing HIV treatment or something like that, or cancer treatment, they are great crucibles for mutating the virus, because the virus kind of has free reign to experiment because it's not being bombarded by T cells and antibodies that are trying to nail its coffin. So it can play. It can sit there and play and incubate, and then it'll spread different versions of itself while it sits there. So it would be expected that some place with poor healthcare would generate all the things. So almost all the diseases, just talking conspiracies again, almost all the deadly diseases, they're not many, by the way. They're probably about 7 that humans are really, are nightmare ones. And one of them was polio, and that's gone. But it is almost possible to, they can't do a Jonas Salk thing and try and get rid of them, although they've often dreamed of doing it. Psychopaths like Peter Dezak and stuff talk about shit like that. But there are a relative handful, and here's the amazing thing: they all come from the Congo. In fact, so local, from this one island in the Congo River, that almost all of them come from. To the point that people have speculated that why don't we just nuke that island and do the whole human race a favor? They they've looked at the origin, and that island is kind of island of Dr. Moreau, I believe, but it's got a lot of bats on it, which is a clue to and bats incubate a lot of viruses without basically getting rid of them in their bodies. So yeah, caves, bats are not healthy places. And then anything you see, chimps and bonobos and a lot of simians they're so close to us that the chances that they can actually make a crossover are very high. The same with pigs are also very close. So a great way to get viruses is keep ducks and pigs together like the Chinese. So the biggest thing you could do for epidemiology is shut down all the labs trying to give employment to eugenicists. Shut them all down and just ban the Chinese from keeping, or South Asians from keeping pigs and ducks in the same place. And that'll be pretty much the best thing that you've ever done in epidemiology in the last 10,000 years.
This is so dark. But I'm going to this I think I'm going to contact Kevin anyway. What do you think, everyone? Just, I know it's heavy, but I think it would be very difficult to find somebody who could give us a bit of information. I think he's quite good in the field. I know he's not a virologist. He's a neuroscientist or a neurophysiologist. So, but I think he's got a good. He's got in his audience. He's got a lot of people who are in that field. So, what do you think? Should I ask him to come on so we can discuss?
I think it's a great idea. But
okay.
I wouldn't stop there. I would ask other people that are speaking freely.
Yeah, but I don't think it should be a recorded meeting. I think we should, well, he might want to record it himself. I would suggest if he wants to, but because I don't know would it even be possible to post it, because a lot of his stuff is being taken down. So there's no point in flagging the group with all this, kind of stuff. What do you think?
I got one strike on YouTube for the
Yeah.
last one we did with him, and it was just because of his name, basically.
Yeah.
So I would say we should do it, but let's do it after we got the manifesto, so we can drop the manifesto on them and tell them you might want to just chuck this.
That's a good idea. That's the good idea. So I'll keep it on the back burner. I kept his email, so because I had to leave his server on Discord because it was just nauseating. So I just couldn't look at it.
I enjoyed the information, but it's just too much hard work. There's just too much craft and stuff, shit going on in this video.
Okay.
Okay. Well, does anybody want to say any more? Do they have any thoughts or stuff about this difficult subject?
I'm just wondering about Gert Vandenbosch, because that Sophie mentioned, because he initially made some videos and then he stopped. and I think he made one last one, and I haven't seen him on YouTube since. Not that that would be surprising, but you know, I would know how to contact him. There must be some way to do it. I guess, you know, whoever we deal with, we probably can't have it recorded anyway. So it's a private conversation.
Yeah, that's. Just one last word I'd like to say on this before we go, to just put it in perspective about how dark it is and stuff. It's like it's not. It's kind of overhyped because, okay, I did way back when it started. I did a back of a envelope calculation, and it went like this. It was like I just took the known R value of the current thing, just compared it to the 1918. So the 1918, if I remember, it was something like twice as infectious, twice as lethal. The population in the Earth was about 1/4. So if you just take the maths and just run it simply like that on the back of an envelope, you come to 50 million. For 50 million was the known death toll of the 1918 virus. I mean, more than that, because the common flu that you get now, the seasonal flu, is the 1918 virus. It never went away. It just became endemic. But if they commonly cite 50 million deaths as the death toll of the 1918 flu. So based on blah 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 that I just said, it works out that you probably can double what happened in 1918. So you come to 100 million. Now, 100 million people is nothing at all. It's the Earth's net increase in population is 100 million in 9 months. So in the time it takes to gestate a baby, there are a net increase of 100 million babies on the planet. So uh, you have to take that into account in terms of, and it's spread out over 5 years or more. So you've got to put that in perspective. It's not that big a deal.
It's not that I meant.
I mean, you got to put it.
It's not that I meant by dark.
Yeah.
What I meant by dark is what you've talked about with the eugenicists and the those projects. That's what I meant by dark.
Yeah, that is the more important thing. So the important thing from the way I see it is those things. It's the social changes. It's the casual way that liberals just chuck their freedoms in the bin. I mean, that's all it took. I mean, in past, there's people fought and died for half the freedoms that people take for granted now. And all you have to do is say, "Oh, boogeyman," and they're like, "Oh, fuck it," freedom of speech. Oh, fuck it, Constitution, fuck it. It's just like, really, after all the indoctrination you got in school, you fucking little liberals, toss out all your freedoms and just go with totalitarian. Really, I mean, that's how low we've sunk. Just to little toddlers, little fucking toddlers. Is like are realizing more and more is basically the adults today are they're infantile to the extent that they essentially just precocious 9-year-olds with basically with a good vocabulary. It's like but in essence, underneath the skin, they are 9-year-olds, infantile, babies, toddlers. It's like, so that's the danger. Is that these guys that just say, "Oh, boo," and it's like they're rounding up people and doing witch hunts and accepting apartheid and accepting digital passports and stuff. When the trouble we went into South Africa to get rid of that, and you do that because it's just one little bug. For fuck's sake, man.
I think here too, we've got more effective means of saying boo now than we did 100 years ago as well, which is probably adding into that. There's much more uniformity of education than there was. There's everything's much more cookie cutter in terms of human psychology. You go back to pre-World War II, and you get people who were self-educated, people who only went to school for 2 or 3 years, people who went to some, the big variation in the kind of origins of people's possible lines of thought. The other thing I just wanted to remark about, you were talking about the sort of date, the limits to growth projected date of now kind of thing. But it's also convenient that it's just slightly over the 100th anniversary of the Spanish flu, where you have this. So you've got this kind of double anniversary, which kind of, reminds you of some of these murder stories where the criminal leaves behind a clue. Wasn't there one you posted once? Was it a flower, or I can't remember what it was, about some serial murderer who always left behind the same thing at the scene of the crime to identify. It's kind of a tease to people who are looking for him. But I wonder whether
The
that's happening
Zodiac,
here too.
the Zodiac.
Yeah, I
It's
can't
funny.
remember. There was one. Yeah, there's probably been any number of them, but I'm just making the point that there's some really sick, twisted joke might be going on with either or both of those anniversaries.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, since you want to go dark, I can. If Sophie thought that was dark, I can get a lot darker than that. So there is an underground culture that you really don't want to know about, but you're going to hear now. So block your ears. Those guys, the Son of Sam, the Zodiac Killers, and that's Jeffrey Dahmer, and that it's rife. What those guys, it's a kind of a meme. It was an early meme, and what those guys are doing is they have this belief that if you anybody that you murder in this life, you get as a slave as in the next life. I think it comes from voodoo. It probably has its origins in voodoo because it's an African idea. But they went over time to suppress that information because they found that people were doing copycatting things, and what was happening was the serial murderers were trying to one up each other. Now that you can't find their manifestos and stuff like that, but you see, there were, you see, you get these fads and copycat things, and it becomes a meme, and so this meme was going around certainly in the 70s and 80s until they censored it. But it still goes on underground. There's still guys that believe this thing, and they're in competition with each other to see who can become the biggest slave lord in the afterlife. Now, that's fringe. The Canadian guys and stuff. The problem is there's also the guy in very suspicious character, which if you speak to a Flemish or Dutch person, I can't remember what his name is. De Hout, I can't remember, but anyway, you speak to a Dutch person, they'll know who this guy is because he's notorious and very embarrassing in Holland. But all of these guys, if you look closely at them, then it gets dark real quick because they have connections. They're always these tendrils that go out, and they go out in the direction of the Epsteins, and you get onto the Bill Gateses and stuff real quick. So if you're looking for dark conspiracy theories, if you look at those guys and look at what the courts did to them, they often let them off for mass murders, serial killings and jailings, tortures with slaps on the wrist virtually. And those guys have a history of not doing too well when they get into prison. They generally slip on the soap when they get into prison. So if you want to look at dark stuff, I suggest going down that avenue. But see, Bill Gates is not a savory character by any stretch of the imagination. In anybody that in 2018, he was sprouting about how Africa's population needs to be controlled, taking active measures in that direction. And then anybody that that and is real keen on jabs and has a very suspect, eugenics history, it's like, you got to watch out for a character like that, man. I'm sorry. that doesn't add up right there. If Silicon Valley types, they're the most selfish, Ayn Randish bastards that you could possibly meet. That I've never met Bill Gates, but known a number of people that know him. And they all say the same. He's the most egotistical little cunt you've ever seen in your fucking life. The fact that he's concerned about Africans is like you can roll on the floor laughing. It's like, yeah, you put together all his thing about, machines to pick the grapes and stuff, and oh, you must depopulate Africa and have a jab. You put those together, and there's like no ways you don't come up with a conspiracy. So, Bill Gates, there's a rotten apple. Now, the problem with those rotten apples, if you start looking, you see this mycelium web of all these rotten. You get very quickly to characters like Epstein and the guy in Belgium and stuff. And what they're doing is they're serving an undercurrent of very evil stuff. Now, the right wing knows about this instinctively. It's just they undo themselves with stupid, adrenochrome kind of baby sacrificing stuff. But you see, if they just stopped with all the nonsense about pizza parlors and stuff, they are actually right. It's proven over and over again that it comes out, and they must be very powerful people, because you get a little glimpse behind the curtain and then gets pulled back again. So anyway, it's not savory.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So what you're saying is they're giving this a kind of curiously unrealistic embellishment based on some things that are actually going on.
Yeah, you see, a lot of the right wing guys are in the military, so they know somebody who knows somebody that knows something. But you see, if you put that through a Christian lens and you start talking about the four horsemen and stuff, then you very quickly, it gets tainted and becomes, Satan, and then they're all Satanists. Well, they're all Satanists, but so are the guys who worship the guy with the white beard. They're all the same. But if you all the stuff that goes on in Bohemian Grove and stuff, it's fairly innocent, but it's also a club of people that don't know where innocent ends and shit you shouldn't do starts. But as far as I can see, they're bored. I mean, it's exactly as you think. It's like if you had unlimited amounts of cash, it's not good. You're gonna explore shit that you shouldn't, just for kicks. You run out of ways of getting kicks if you're super rich. Is my conclusion. And so they say power corrupts and stuff. Well, everybody thinks, oh, it means you become a tyrant. No, it means you become a deviant. They're all deviants, right? And the problem is deviancy is normalized. So the right wing has that bit right. All the instincts are right. But then they go and undo themselves because they're clueless and ignorant about the world, and they don't really have access to those echelons. So they do bad reporting on the truth. So the right wing just do misinformation and reports. But the problem is that the liberal mainstream say, oh no, that's misinformation. They say, no, it's bad reporting about the truth. So it's unfortunate. But, and then there is also always the possibility, talking conspiracies, that they do that deliberately. You see, they have the history going all the way back to the OSS and stuff. Is you deliberately put out a madcap conspiracy theory that's so mad that nobody could believe it, and then it covers up something true, like say development of a secret aircraft or something. So at least some of the UFO stories that came out of Area 51, they were to cover skunkworks projects. And they worked like a dream. Whenever anybody saw something, they misreported it as the UFO instead of, a aircraft development program. So, it works, that kind of deliberate seeding of the ground in conspiracy theories, just making conspiracy theories is a good way of inoculating the population against novelty or any strangeness. So the liberals don't know how to differentiate exaggerated reports from the truth. They're just not equipped to. So they just automatically write off anything new and strange. So again, this is the same thing with the flipning. They're automatically, without any evidence, just grasp at any straw to discredit the messenger. So that because it's just easier for them. They don't want to know. They are desperate not to hear that they've been indoctrinated in school, that the people that they loved most as school teachers and primary school teachers and their trust figures like doctors and people in white coats, they're desperate to not hear that those people are actually against you. So they don't want to see evil. They'll do anything not to see evil. So you can anything. You can get a Karen and Ripple can like drop a few bits of misinformation from Yale, and then it's like, okay, that's been debunked. And then fact checkers echo the debunking and amplify it, and then before you know it, a good bit of information is buried about a mile deep. And you see, I made a mistake. When I started out making videos, I didn't know anything about social media. I avoided it like crap. But I naively thought that we were in a different era. I think Faulty's making this mistake too, where people are outraged, people go and look into it. It's like, I realized to my cost, nobody does that. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody. I thought you could drop some hints and people would pick them up, follow them, and then get outraged. And I found out that world is gone because nobody gets outraged. What happens now apparently is people look at shit, go, oh, you hurt my feelings. Oh, that's dark. Oh, you made me feel bad. Oh, you're a bad person. Downvote, swipe right, and carry on. And that's all you get. It's like, yeah, it's just a question of, do you make me feel good or bad? If you make me feel good, I'll listen to you. If you make me feel bad, it's like, fuck off. I need any excuse will do to shut you up, cancel you, deplatform you, shut you down. And so it's very hard to reach people. So I thought, well, you can reach people by starting a cult. And so at this stage, I just think, look, you can walk up to people, beat people over the head with the 2x4 that says the flipping is coming, and they still wouldn't fucking get it. So it's like, I thought like, well, hell, all the caution and shit that I went to is like, you can't reach anybody anymore. So it's just people won't even research shit. People won't even people are not even skeptical. They won't even look at it. You see, if you any one of these things that I said, if you pick up the trail and go and look, you will quickly go down a rabbit's hole where you think, oh my fuck, everything is just pointing in this direction, true after true after true, just basically the amplifying. So nobody does that. Nobody does that. It's like, it's the only way I can see is putting information out there is like John Oliver, where you treat people like little children and you try and put together, stuff in the old days would have made people go, that's outrageous. And now, it has to be inserted with all this infantile little fart jokes and and it's just for fucking toddlers. And then John Oliver gets Pulitzer Prize awards and Emmys and stuff for his reporting. See why? I mean, it's insufferable. I can't watch it. I want to gag. But now I see why. That's the only way you can talk to adults these days. Is they are literally toddlers. Unless you put dancing zebras and stuff, you can't talk to them about a serious subject. So yeah, I finally realized where John Oliver's at, and stop despising him so much, I guess. But
Hugh,
anyway,
just as you're talking there, I'm not quite sure why, but I'm thinking about the problem or the situation that seems to exist on the right, where it's been very noticeable lately because they're very much against the kind of authoritarianism that's going on at the moment regarding the illness. And, the number of times that I've been able to read or look at that kind of material, and they seem to be right on the target, the understanding of it and what they're saying. But in the very same breath, the same people will be saying, oh, and all this climate change conspiracy bullshit that's going on. And so they're absolutely blind on one side and, believe in the whole thing is just a a fanciful story. And yet on the other side of it, regarding the authoritarianism and that kind of thing, that they're completely with it. And I was I think there was just something in what you were saying that was beginning to unravel that for me, but I can't quite get my brain onto it. Have you got anything there you can say about that?
Yeah, you see, they are our allies in the sense that they're libertarians and they have strong libertarian and anti-authoritarian instincts. They all go wrong very quickly because they go into climate change denial, and then they go into anti-Semitism, and then they go into Christianity and this kind of biblical apocalypse. And so, they're their own worst enemy. If they're just a little more strategic, dropped the anti-Semitism, and picked up a book and actually looked about climate change, then they might actually get somewhere. Well, I mean, maybe they think they're getting far enough as they are. You see that the right wing is always served an ace by the left, just because the left is the left. So in 2022, brace yourselves, because if I'm right about the G variant being the one that you should have worried about, and by the way, I'm going to say, look at that post that I said about epigenic sin. So one of the reasons why you don't want to rush out and get an early jab is your T cells, they kind of fight the last war. So they will fight, they will respond with antibodies to the first variant that you were exposed to. So if you get a jab, it's for the alpha variant. If you want to hold off because the alpha variant's not that bad. You want to hold off until basically something like really, really bad comes along, so that you make sure that that's the one you're fighting. What they're making a huge mistake, I think, because of this concept of epigenic sin, is they're priming the world's population for the alpha variant, and this is unlikely to be the super variant. So G variant might be the super variant. In other words, immune response to the wrong variant. So it just goes to show you why this mandating and this heavy arm stuff to try and coerce you, take away your own judgment is so wrong, because you have a right to make these kind of assessments and research and decide which variant you want. It's criminal, for what they're doing. But yeah, anyway, so I wanted to. Oh, but anyway, what was the thing I just got devoted on the epigen? Oh, it's 2022. Yeah. So I want to paint this scenario. If I'm right, and the G variant is the dog, imagine in 2022 the election. So basically, where the left always has an on goal, and they always do woke. They always do critical race theory and stuff, and they're always so self-assured and conceited and convinced they're on the right side of history. The arrogant fucks always hand it over to the right. So in 2022, Biden's gonna probably either fall asleep or otherwise pop his clogs, right? I mean, long before he gets to the end of this term. So if Harris is the president with a 2022 backlash election, that's not cool. But the left almost always hands it as a gift to the right just by being the fucking left. And so they need to get over that shit. They need to get over woke. They need to get over pretending that they're not woke, and woke isn't a thing. But
I'm just wondering.
We're heading for totalitarianism again. Is Trump hasn't gone anywhere, and they are setting it up. They're teeing it up for him for 2024. So you can see it all converging there. So just saying, get ready for a massive backlash in 2022.
Well, there's two things. Can I say two things there? One is that what I think is the horseshoe effect, which I think you spoke of once before, which is you're going to get the authoritarianism one way or the other anyway. Just to go back a little bit earlier, um, I was just thinking about the right in terms of conservatism, and do you think that their denial of climate change is simply comes out of their conservatism, that they just can't um, get their brains around change, and climate change threatens massive change, uh, and so therefore they just go into denial because it's just too much of a thing to contemplate in terms of well being staying the same. Is that is that too simplistic a way of looking at it, or is it anything in it?
No, no, that's the way I see it, because they seem to me to be like the conservative South Africans that would just talk down the obvious. They would shoot down the obvious at every turn, and you could see what they're doing is they were doing what liberals now do with downvotes on social media. Is they just trying to avoid looking at the obvious that's coming. Is that they can't cope with what they know is coming emotionally. So the simplest way to deal with it is to pretend it doesn't exist, and just then you can use any flimsy evidence as an excuse to for your denial. But there again, the left is handing them basically a big prize, because the the left takes an issue like that's genuine, ecological and climate collapse, which is the genuine issue. All the tech billionaires then start the ESG and green tech industry, which is a complete fuck up and is like utterly superfluous and will actually make things worse. And then, squeezes, money out of the government like a socialist for all these green programs, which are actually carbon intensive. So they hand the excuse to the right, because the right says, oh no, all of this stuff is to make money, and they can cite all the things where all these boondoggles and basically unscientific nonsense like solar panels and wind farms are basically just money making schemes for rich green tech entrepreneurs. So they point to that and say where they're absolutely right, but then come to the false conclusion and say, well, that explains climate change. Is it's just a gold rush money making scheme? And say no, it is a gold rush and money making scheme, but it doesn't mean that climate change isn't real. And they don't like that, because then they know that's what the truth is. So,
Well,
but
I think
anyway,
too
again,
that
the Greens, the left, everybody, they hand it to them on a plate with all this so-called climate action.
but the other side of it is that the right don't seem to be particularly self-analytical. I mean, I suppose it goes with the package. So
That's their
yeah,
strength. That's their strength. You see,
yeah, but yeah, I know it's their strength, but at the same time, it's a weakness. Uh, depends what
so
particular.
it's a short-term strength and a long-term weakness. You see, the left's problem is they can't get out of the starting gate, because they have analysis paralysis and morality analysis paralysis and stuff. So they argue and finesse, and it's like, if you heard like communists and if you hear these Trotskys trot, they're just endless verbiage and analytics and stuff, and they just can't get their fucking act together. And so they all, it's basically Monty Python, the same damn things. It's the People's Front of Judea problem. So the left is all the People's Front of Judea, where their hair split and get turn out to be Pharisees, endlessly arguing minutiae, and can never get to action. The right gets to action really quick. They're all unified. They can all agree just by instinct, and but then it unravels on them in the long term, because the consequences of goose stepping off into the future are severe.
Um, yeah, go ahead. Yes,
No,
yes,
no,
yes.
that was it. Yeah.
My reflection on what you're saying is that there is a background that reminds me of our first conversations when we were when you had posted all these Adam Curtis videos on the programming, on this whole thing that's been going on for the last 50, 60 years and in society. And I'm kind of, in myself, I can recognize this reticence to sometimes look at the dark, because, as you said, you know, the teachers, the parents, the whole thing that we have constructed in our belief system. And I can understand very well where all these people are. And I am deconstructing gradually over the years, and my experience is helping me, my age, etc. So yes, there is this, and I could feel that with the people I met yesterday, who are kind of opening their eyes, but there's some areas where they don't want to go. And it's before we go to the manifesto and the sigil, I think it would be interesting to hear, is Petra there? Because this is deeply psychological. This is we're threading in a place people don't want to see. They don't want to see this.
It's also Makya. So it's also Makya. So getting into the psychology and stuff, it's a deadlock. So you can go and analyze the psychology like a left-wing rabbi for all you like. You're just wasting time. It's just cut through to the chase and say, look, all of these things are conceits. The flippening is coming. It's like you're wasting precious time. It's like you forget the psychology, the stuff. The psychology is too late. I realized in 2018 that the psychology is too entrenched. It's a magic deadlock. If you take the brain, and it's basically, it puts us into psychological deadlock, so that in the past it served us well as a species, because conservatism is good in the hunter-gatherer. Neanderthals were very, very conservative, and it's good for you see the danger as a hunter-gatherer is you go off on a tangent and do something real lemming and stupid. Unfortunately, we put ourselves in a position where lemming and stupid on a mass scale is required. We need shamanic psychosis, and everything is designed to prevent that. So you just have to cut through to the chase and say it's makyo to even start analyzing it. In fact, psychology as it's been taught, and sorry Petra, but psychologists in general are actually a hindrance, because all they can do is reinforce the status quo. They don't have the language, they don't have the background, they've been put in upside down world, and all they can do is try and patch up, put the world together, keep the concentration camp going. So they are.
I think it was Hugh. It might have been Ramana Maharshi. I'm not sure. Or Nisargadatta maybe made the comment in one of his talks. He said, well, "What was the point in examining the contents of the rubbish that you've got to throw away anyway?" In regard to dealing with the psychological issues.
Exactly. I think that's where we must move on to with the whole pivot towards, excuse the pun, to the manifesto, and just putting the flippening front and center. Is you're just saying, look, stop examining the garbage. It's all being thrown out. Just move on. And
can I just jump in?
Psychology, that is the best psychology you need. Is just stop psychology. Stop psychology. That's the best psychology you can do.
Petra, Petra, have you got another? I think it's your microphone, Petra. Have you got something unusual happening there? I don't think the others can hear you. No, I don't think Hugh or Sophie can hear you. But the other thing that's happening is you're showing on the screen that your mic is turned off, but in fact we can hear your kitchen. So there's just something a bit strange. Something strange is happening with you. Yeah. That it might be. Yeah. No. Hugh and Sophie, can you hear Petra?
No, she's muted.
No, they still can't hear you, Petra. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Can you maybe just use the phone by itself and turn the headphones off? Or maybe if you're
No,
using,
no, go out and come back in again. That normally works.
get it to disconnect. Make sure it's disconnected and then reconnect. I'll go right out of the whole thing. Yeah, sorry, I see what you're saying. I think she might have another Bluetooth thing turned on. That happens to me sometimes. If you've got two of them turned on at the same time, you get a strange effect occasionally.
Yeah, people were complaining on YouTube saying like, "Can't you bastards, afford a pair of cheap headphones or something?"
Yeah. No, I don't know. You probably can't hear it, but I can hear all the noises from Petra's kitchen. I don't know. You probably can't hear it.
Couldn't hear it.
She's been.
No.
No, it's quite a lot of noise. I didn't know if you could hear it or not.
Gary?
Yeah,
Okay, now we
I
can
can
hear you.
hear. Oh, okay,
Oh,
it's right.
okay.
Okay,
So,
go
yeah, I
ahead
was
then.
trying to talk
Yep.
a few times before, and I realised you couldn't hear me. It was quite strange.
Yeah.
Just to jump back earlier, when you were talking about the right not being critical of authoritarianism in a way that resonated, but not at all being climate deniers. I noticed that too, and I don't know if you recall, Hugh, but I asked you almost an identical question 2 weeks ago. What I observe is the collapse in respect for experts because we can no longer trust them. Like Hugh says, it's their instincts, and the instincts are correct. That they put the experts in the same category. That's what I've noticed because I've been digging into that question. Has really interested me too lately, Gary, as I feel this sense of, yeah, wow, these are the only folks who are critiquing authoritarianism, yet they're anti-climate science. And I think they think all of the science is captured and all of it's a lie to promote a particular kind of,
Well,
Gates,
does
etc.
that,
agenda.
Petra? Do you think that comes out of the sort of? I mean, my impression is that the right thinks that the universities are completely owned and controlled and influenced by the left, and so when
Completely.
you get experts coming along, they assume, well, these are university conditioned people, and therefore we automatically can't trust them because they're left indoctrinated.
That's
So
right.
possibly
And I
that
agree with
collapse. Go on.
Sorry, yeah, I agree with you that the instinct is correct, but it ends up being overkill or overreach because then they reject the whole lot. They throw the baby out with the bathwater. But it's essentially that it's all become partisan. So what is said, as far as I can tell, that's not important. It's who said it. To the extent that the same thing can be said by different people and heard from one person and not another. So it seems to me now that people in general have become incredibly tribal, and that's really happened in the last 5 years or so. This is created by social media and anxiety. And so what we're seeing now is, which is why we are a bit discombobulated, because we can hear the right speaking and hear a kind of truth there, but most people who are on the left can't. Likewise, people on the right cannot hear. They can't hear a climate scientist speak because they just go, oh, that's just a product of the university. He's just woke or she's just woke. And so they can't hear it and they think it's captured. And it is captured science. But yeah, I think there's some conflation there where experts aren't in any sense respected anymore or seen to be speaking the truth. And there's an intuition in that that's accurate. And it's entirely partisan. So that's now seen as a left issue. That's how I
Yeah, that's
see it.
interesting. Yeah, and I'm interested. It's good that you've said that.
The other comment I wanted to make when I tried to
Because
jump in before
I
no
mean,
one
it's
could
good
hear
to
me.
hear it from you because you've got that experience in that realm, so it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, and I think what Hugh was saying earlier, I found interesting as well about conspiracies. So I've been at a group today, like a few of you. I'm kind of trying to connect with people outside of this system, and one of the women in the group was saying the ABC, so that's our national broadcaster for those who aren't Aussies, ran a whole series on conspiracy theories this morning, apparently, and it's that same thing where everything is considered a conspiracy. That there's no willingness to get what's his name, Van Boschen, a number of these scientists, Peter McCulloch, who have been critical of the lockdowns or critical of the mandates or even critical of the V itself, are not given any kind of any room on the ABC. They're no longer even attempting to hear another side. It's just dismissed outright. And I find that it's about novelty, yes, but I think it's also about fear, and it's about what you were saying before, Hugh, where they're just completely ready in like 1 or 2 years to just hand over all of the freedom. But I think the other piece that's tricky here, and I think I heard Eric Weinstein saying this a while ago, is that both conspiracy theories and novel ideas often come from the same heterodox place. It's outside orthodoxy, and having that capacity to critically evaluate them is what's missing. So there's just this blanket rejection. But I think it is true that they both tend to come from the lunatic fringe. You know, I mean, insofar as any great scientific revolution or revolution in our thinking has typically been rejected first and then accepted as truth later. And there'll be a price to be paid, whether it's Galileo or whoever. But it seems now that there's no willingness to even accept that as part of the process. So anything that isn't in line with the dominant hegemonic viewpoint now is just dismissed as conspiracy theory. And people can't get out of that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think it's better to claim it now and go, yeah, that's called critical thinking. And some of it's dross and some of it might be useful.
Yeah, there's no useful end to be gained by getting over this problem, right? There's no, if you could magically make wave a magic wand and make it go away, it doesn't achieve much, right?
You mean the problem of conspiracy?
No, I mean just having the public discourse be functional. The whole idea of having a functional public discourse comes from a silly place. And that the silly place is liberals believe that you can have some dialogue, come to some consensus. It's a mammalian brain thing, that we can all be agreeable, we can find the truth through consensus, and then get to a good place. All of it is horseshit from the left. So it comes from liberal indoctrination. It is part of liberal humanism and the part of the Enlightenment ideal. So it's Enlightenment idealism that this is even a problem. So it's like you have to leap over it and say, like, what does it matter? At this stage, the greenhouse. So at this stage, the Arctic is going to melt. The BOE is baked in as a certainty. We've passed the tipping point. The Greenland ice sheet has been so for 20 years, and the cleft rates are going to go off. So it really doesn't matter a shit what the public dialogue is. It doesn't matter what the consensus is. It doesn't matter if you're an XR and you campaign everybody. And now you've raised awareness, and now basically, raising awareness and getting consensus does not translate into saving anything. There's not a tadpole that is going to be saved by getting everybody to start being functioning. That's what the liberals need to get over. Is that the whole basis of their belief is that we can reach a consensus and do consensus action. The horror that they cannot come to terms with is the fact is all their liberal conceits is the individual and the collective doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered for a while. Get over it. Liberal democracy is dead. It doesn't matter about the dialogue. It doesn't matter about Joe Rogan and all the analysis and what'll make things right. We are past that. That is the part of the garbage that is going out. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I have to think about that. Because we're going to.
You see, it's this more, liberals, everybody's in upside down world. But you see, they also, the liberal shtick is to say, if we just, sort the right way up, in other words, our way and the way we were indoctrinated in liberal education, then everything would be okay. So no, that's upside down world. The thing is, the first step is nothing is going to be okay. So stop all that shit about trying to gerrymander and tinker and do social engineering and raising awareness. And it's like all of that stuff is a waste of time. You're running around like a headless chicken in front of a steamroller. And ironically, the quickest path to getting to what you want is everybody to shut up and concentrate, is to basically let that message, is to say, guys, it's over. Or everything you're talking about is too late. So, you can have endless discussions about the left and the right and the stuff. Nobody's saying the one thing we need to say is like, guys, it's too late. This conversation should have died in the 70s. The conversation now we're having should have died in the 70s. It's too late.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on your point about therapy or psychology. I'm not actually a psychologist, I'm a therapist. My work was in sociology, but I still practice that. I don't think that's irrelevant if it's a process of witnessing, as I think I talked with you a little bit about in an email. It's not about making people better to fit into the system. Absolutely, that's too late and morally reprehensible. But it's possible to bear witness and to speak in truth and to support each other, like, say, this group does to some degree, or the group I have a physical meeting with does. So that in itself is a form of therapy. I think you can distinguish, or you could call it something else. You could also call it friendship and support, but we can distinguish the kind of medical industrial version of therapy, which is to make people better to fit in. And then there's other kinds. I don't know how that sits with people, but I don't think the only kind is that medical kind.
Yeah, I think that's the good kind. I mean, that's the kind of thing on, our collapse has a thing for our remedial or our therapy, but yeah, I'm not seeing a lot from the mainstream. In fact, I think you could lose your credentials if you could be struck off for being a doomer therapist, right?
Yeah, you'd be accused of traumatizing people.
Yeah, and I think what people need is trauma. Is this idea? See, why I say they're basically propping up the concentration camp is they all pitch towards avoiding trauma. They don't have access. They've lost the knowledge of shamanism and the value of trauma, basically as trauma as a healing. I mean, it's known in the fringe. There's a book you can read called something about the healing trauma or something like that. The way of trauma, something along those lines. But anyway,
is it The Body Remembers? That's another one. The Body Remembers, about trauma.
Yeah, but no, I'm talking about the value of trauma, of inducing trauma, the exact opposite to what they say.
There's that concept of the wounded warrior.
Yes, the way of the wound. That way of the wound.
Yeah.
That's what that book is called. So it has been raised, by many clinical psychologists and therapists, but it's been smacked down equally hard. So yeah, I mean, I think you have to be a doomer therapist. You can't change the system. You'd have to wait for the current guys to die off. But it's too far gone for them to have access to shamanism. But the people in South Africa and psychiatrists and things like that have looked at sangomas and shamanism in Africa and then been convinced that that's the way to go. There's another stream that's going down the psychedelic route. But the mainstream is lost. They're actually equivalent to people on the Titanic telling people that they don't have anything to worry about when clearly the ship is going down.
Yeah, absolutely. And conversely, mental health has now become the only way of getting out of things. So a friend of mine who's still in the university system says that's what everyone uses now for extensions or days off, or it's a sort of new religion. It can't be questioned, whereas everything else can be. People are forced.
Mental health day, yeah. I'm taking mental health
that's right.
day.
Everyone's forced in every single way to do what the authoritarian governments and corporations want, but somehow mental health is this only way you can get out of stuff. So everyone's having mental breakdowns, which I'd say 50% are faux and 50% are real, but there's no other language of resistance now. So, but it's quite insidious because as a language of resistance, it sort of induces and cultivates victimization.
Yeah, but there's also another problem, and that's that Big Pharma likes it. Big Pharma promotes it because there's a lot of money to be made in anxiolytics and, Zoloft and, and the opioid crisis is, they're thriving off mental health epidemic. So they love it and they're promoting it. They're saying, they promote the idea of pain, and existential pain is the same as physical pain, and they love all of that stuff. So that the industrial complex loves this this mental health epidemic that they are contributing to.
I
Yes, I
think
agree.
there's another point there, because I went part the way down that road myself, in various misadventures along the way, and I think what became obvious was that you you could take this exit ramp using the excuse of some kind of mental breakdown. Uh, but when I observed most people who were further down the track of that path, they they had bought into it themselves. In other words, they didn't realize that they needed to get out to access a place of sanity. They they ended up believing this sort of psychotherapeutic medical message, and then cast themselves in this role of being of actually having this illness or this disorder, and of course, so that even though they got out of the system, they were just they were not liberated. They were chained to the. Sorry, I'm probably not explaining this very well. They were sort of chained to their belief in the particular syndrome and in whatever they had been diagnosed with, because it had been at the same time their ticket out at the other, but then they'd let themselves get imprisoned by it.
Yeah, so this is a very good point, because this is something very relevant for collapse, because the people are tying themselves, especially with this over prescription and stuff. They're tying themselves to the industrial system that's going away. So what's likely to happen is it will be a very bad path. That path of taking a label and then getting having a note to teacher so you don't have to take part in the industrial madness is very dangerous in the collapse of the system, because the first thing that is going to happen is probably what Allison was all about, and that's you. They will give you a UBI. They will give you social programs, and the expansion of socialism is going to be huge under right or left wing, because it's not really socialism. It's state totalitarianism. So the right will do it with kind of impact tokens and things like that. They will do it in a privatized way, private-public partnership, and the left will do it in an entirely socialist way. But you'll get the same result, and that is you will be put out to sea, but it will come with strings attached, and your life will be a hell of monitoring and prodding and nudges and all these kind of surveillance things that will keep you on a path, which the suicide rate will go up tremendously in that regime. Now that's the early stage. The late stage, it winds up in a gas chamber, because what I've said over and over again is when they take responsibility for you, in other words, you become a domesticated animal, right? They will feed you while you can work or do something or add to the system. If you take a UBI and you start sucking on the social teat, you have a function. You're basically boosting the stock of all these companies and State Street, BlackRock, and all these hedge funds. They're going to make money out of you. So you have you basically have a reason for your existence. As the system collapses, they will no longer be able to afford you. So you'll be put out. So like a farm animal, if they put you out to pasture, sure, they can do it while in times of luxury. But when things get bad and they start to decide who gets fed, you are at the end of the list. See, this is what I say is like, guys, get over your fucking anti-Nazism and looking everywhere for anti-Semitism and stuff. Go and understand the concentration camps and go and understand what really happened in those death camps. The first thing is, they are not death camps. They are labor camps. They become death camps when they can no longer extract labor and they can no longer feed them. Now, you are in exactly that position. while they have your labor and they can do, you can do a bullshit job that supports the white collar economy. Yes, you've got a place, and they will give you socialized medicine, but it will decay. This whole system is decaying. There are droughts coming. We are at the limits to growth. At the limits to growth, they will start rationing. You, as somebody on the peripheries, will be part of their surplus population, and that's when they start culling you. So that's why all these conspiracy theories of depopulation and stuff, if they're not real now, they soon will be, because the system will not be able to support the masses. Soon there's going to be food shortages, grain shortages, and the system will not be able to support socialism. It's everybody talks about Sweden and Norway as being social ideals and say, oh, socialism works there. Talk to somebody from Norway before you say that crap. Social systems in Norway are crumbling. They cannot afford them, because they're predicated on growth oil, right? So that basically the fossil fuel, every social program you've ever had is predicated on oil. So just get that through your head, is that when you're farmed down, it'll first be in an Allison kind of way, which is, basically you'll have an electronic collar in effect on you. And then eventually, when they can't feed people anymore, they'll find more and more reasons why they slowly cull you off. So you are taking the phenobarbital, you are taking the Kool-Aid. This is not the way to go. Get over socialism.
I don't know if I'm going to derail you here or not. Just tell me if you don't want to go there. But I was thinking about where we just started off a minute ago with where Petra was saying, people who are the only exit they could get that was legitimately allowed or accepted now was just sort of psychological breakdown route. But there's another aspect of that, I guess a more positive one. I just want to run past you and just see if you're interested in making a comment. Over the years of reading various interesting people and books, works of art, any music, anything like that, not so much 20th century stuff, but 19th century certainly. I found again and again there was a kind of it's probably not a good term, a kind of intellectual shamanism. In other words, traditionally the shaman would be the one who was a little bit different and had some peculiar qualities, and he would go out by himself, even though he might return to the tribe to fulfill various functions. He was the shaman or the witch or whatever would be somewhat of in a unique position. And I started thinking about it.
They're schizophrenics.
Yeah. I started thinking about this in terms of people. Yeah, but I just want to just let me finish the little story. I'll try to condense it. Is that I eventually, when I actually got very annoyed, because I was looking at people who were creative and turning out lots of very interesting stuff. And I remember one day arriving at Franz Kafka and seeing how, in a way, he got a certain privilege from being ill with tuberculosis, because it got him away from his job and enabled him for a little while to indulge his creative, what he really wanted to do, which was to write and to comment, make social commentary. And I realized that what Petra's describing here is that the mental breakdown, is the psychological breakdown exit, that a lot of people in the 19th century were using their physical ailments, and I ended up calling it Kafka's syndrome, just to give it a name, because there seemed to be so many creative people that conveniently ended up with tuberculosis, and I can't do anything else, so I've just got to spend all my rest of my life composing magnificent music. I think Liszt was one of them. And so I ended up with this concept of Kafka's syndrome. But just the reason why I'm mentioning it now, because it actually applies probably to most of the people on this call, and I think especially to Hugh, is that you've been able to arrive at a position in your life, and I have, and I think Sophie has, where we have been able to step aside from it, and it's put us in a privileged position in a way to think and get a perspective on things, and especially in Hugh's case, to write and be, genuinely creative and helpful. And so all I wanted to do in just mentioning this was just set the two things side by side, that in a way this kind of escape via Kafka's syndrome is a how could you put it? Is the productive end of the productive way of doing this. It doesn't lead you down this death camp medicalisation, pharmaceuticalisation pathway. So I just, if that makes any sense to you.
The problem is it's fundamentally philandering. So, it gets you out of the army. It gets you out. It's basically Blackadder trying to avoid going over the top with pencils in his nose and underpants on his head. If you've seen that episode of Blackadder Goes Forth. But the problem with this kind of philandering is, there are a number of problems. It's good to do strategically. There's a long history of using it as a survival tactic, but I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket. You've got to do it out of convenience. But if you get trapped in it, then that's very bad. So in other words, the problem is exactly what you've highlighted: is you start to believe your own malingering. So this is basic malingering 101. So strategic malingering has a very honored history. In ancient Greece, there's this guy who, I mean, a Greek hero, Achilles, right? He philandered. He pretended he was nuts. He said, like, I'm not going to go into this battle. You guys are fucked up, and go and kill yourselves if you want. So what he did was he feigned madness, and I can't remember what he did, but he plowed. He would something about a plow in his field, and he got caught out because I can't remember who the character was, but some smart ass went to expose him as a fraud, and he exposed him as a fraud in the legend by putting his baby in front of the plow, and Hercules went round his baby. He didn't plow the baby up, and he said, "There you are. You see, you're malingering." And he went, "Oh shit!" So he had to turn up at the Battle of Troy. But there's also another story in ancient Greece where this guy he was a famous malingerer, and coward, and so he would go into battle and drop his shield and run, which is despicable. You would be an outcast for most Greeks to do that, and Spartans. But he did it time and time again, and he was such a card that he kind of made a personality cult out of it. He was a kind of celebrity because it wasn't that he was completely cowardice. It's just he just didn't have the foibles of the other Greeks. He didn't have the moral, absolutism of like faulty. And so he just said, like, fuck, why not drop my shield and run? It's cheap to buy a new shield compared to losing your life. And it was like so honest and forthright. The Greeks didn't know what to do with him. But the problem is just you got to know what you're doing, right? And so in other words, if you get a note of you get excused from PE class or swimming class from the teacher, that's all very well, as long as you don't start to believe your own malingering. So the key thing is to get a note from teacher to get out of the labor camp, and not waste a single moment. Use that time to prepare the end of the labor camp and an escape route out of it. So you don't want to go, oh, I've got toothache, and then go and sit in your bed. As soon as everybody turns their back, out of your bed and use that fucking time to dig like a demon. so yeah, that's what I'd say about that. It's yeah, I mean, malingering is an art. There's the Greeks are experts at it. I mean,
I often wondered, in looking at.
Well, I mean, there's an underground now. They're driving an underground economy. They're driving people to, Greeks were always a bit ready. They've had 400 years under the Turks. They know how to get around bureaucracy. But as the state now has muscled people down more and more, is they finding more and more creative ways of getting around it. So yeah, there's black economy. There's black market here in fake jab certificates and stuff. It's like, what did you expect?
No, when I was originally looking at this, I actually did it in reverse. Was every time I came across somebody who was creative and who the first thing that would strike me was that they couldn't have done it unless their life had given them some kind of advantage in time or finances or help from other people. And so you would work from the sort of flashing neon light, which was a creative thing that they'd done, and then work back to their biography. And you would almost invariably find this cluster of facilitation that came about through, some kind of excuse, some kind of windfall of money or something like that. And of course, those people had to be worthy of it in a way because that they needed their own. They couldn't have done it without some personal qualities that they had anyway. But I think I often wondered because there was just so much of it, and I wondered whether any of those people realised what their position was, and whether how much they owed it to not being part of the ordinary system, because it just never seems to have been acknowledged. There didn't seem to be.
They know people like Dali and Picasso and Banksy and stuff. They know exactly what they're doing. You see, they have a very keen sense that they're in a mental asylum. And the mainstream people that we call sane in Upside Down world are absolutely barking mad. And they know that very keenly, and they have no intention of participating in the madness for more than 2 seconds. So yeah, I mean, Dali would feign sickness at every turn, just to basically get out of the labor camp. But you see, those guys, they were talented enough. It's the way of the artist. So the artist and the trickster figure are the same. The way it's the fox. They played the fox all the time, and they knew what they were doing. They knew very well. But they luckily they were talented enough that and then socially talented enough too to manage the art market and then earn their freedom, or not their freedom, but a special place in the insane asylum by virtue of the fact that they could sell the art for a lot of money. But they all knew what they were doing, and they played a little game of who can risk saying it. So, the Dadaists and the urinal that was put on in exhibition. The urinal. I can't remember what his name was. That whole school of conveniences. What was his name? Oh, Gary, you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry, I think it starts with D. I just can't get it now. Does that give you a clue? I just can't think of the name.
It's not Dada, but anyway,
the artist. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
But those there's a tradition of how much of the game people can reveal, but yeah, and the idea of actually whinging out of work to do art is I agree, it's like kind of part of all artists. You kind of you're in a cleft stick. You either have to do fascist art and stuff that's utilitarian, decorative for the ideologues and the basically you have to do decorate the prison kind of art, conforming, or otherwise you can do rebellious art, in which case you've got to be talented because you're going to make money out of pennies. Anyway, yeah, I'm definitely in that camp. Trying to
Have we?
well, this is the thing, because you can see this even on if you go and look at some of these YouTube channels of people who have got put a lot of work into them and all the rest of it, and they generally don't reveal anything about their personal lives, but after a little while you pick up a little clue here and a little clue there and realize that they just aren't some ordinary person who works the checkout counter every day, or is in an office every day. They didn't have some difference, some kind of facilitation. They wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all done as Freud was very keen on this subject, and he wrote about this in Civilization and its Discontents. And also they had what they called the problem of the artist, like Otto Rank and those guys went into all of that. But the idea of the artist trying to get out of labor, and because it's cut insane, and B, try and signal to other people to get out is the real art. Real art is not done with a paintbrush and a canvas. It's done by communicating under the wire to the others. But it's difficult because you can sell your soul. You can be a Joe Rogan and be a centralist, and then, in other words, you're doing Auschwitz radio, and you can follow within the guidelines and stuff like that. But it's that way you can be fed and get lots of money. But if you want your integrity and you want to be a rebel, then there's no money in it. So there's no market for the truth, you see. So this is the problem of the artist is trying to tell the truth, particularly from the four other brain layers. It's trying to tell the truth to the alien cortex, which fundamentally is a liar and lives on lies. It feeds on lies. It only exists because of lies. So in the face of that, to tell the truth to power, in other words, for the four brain layers to tell the truth to the alien cortex, they have to be on a high wire, and it's basically it's a minefield. But if you tell the truth, there's no market for it, because the alien cortex doesn't want the truth; it wants lies. So you have to add a little bit of a lie into the art, and that's the art, is decorating it with enough lies so that you can get past the alien cortex. And successful people can make money and tell the truth. But you see, this is the problem that I'm saying, where I started this conversation with it's to tell the people about the flippening is virtually impossible, because in the old days the artist would be subtle and communicate subtly, but now you can put up a banner and shout on the loudhailer and stuff, and people there's no subtlety left. In the internet age, there's no subtlety left, and so you can't dog whistle and speak under the wire or anything to the prisoners in the camp. It's just they'll pick you. The camp guards will pick you out in a second if you tell the truth, and all the prisoners are inoculated against any mavericks. So it's the problem of the artist now is more difficult than ever.
This goes back to what Petra. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the talk. Petra was saying about Michael Leunig, the cartoonist, who was cancelled in Australia a little while ago for being a little bit too blunt, But actually, I was actually thinking of, I don't know what this fellow's name was. It was Frida Kahlo's husband. I think like, I don't know when it was, back in the 1930s or something, he was commissioned to do a mural for some car company, General Motors or something. And he did this very communistic workers, power to the workers kind of thing, I get I can't remember the story in detail, but I think it was completed, and then they finally realised that he was having a joke at their expense and booted him out. But it was this grand thing painted in the factory.
They all do it. Like Gustav Klimt
Yeah.
did it in a ceiling, I think, called philosophy. So for the philosophy department in
Yeah,
or something, he
yeah.
basically he did as much as you could say in a picture is philosophy and medicine is bullshit. And they were onto him. They caught him, and then they were like, "Damn, we paid you, we paid you a lot of money to do this, and you just took the piss." And then a lot of people, said, "But that is good philosophy." And so although they caught him, I don't think they painted it over. But man, the philosophers were angry. I think they're still angry.
I think you posted that once quite a long time ago. I remember that. Yeah. So what are we going to do now? It's 2 hours. Are you going to move on to the manifesto, or is it?
So it's maybe that was we did the manifesto indirectly in a lot of this, but anyway, I'm carrying on writing it up so that have something for people to review. But yeah, just in terms of the sigil and consecrating the sigil and stuff. So yeah, maybe I didn't communicate it very well, but what I was intending was that everybody does their own ceremony, so something that's completely personal and completely meaningful to them, and then you don't tell me or anybody else, or you can maybe refer it to Lionel and get some advice, because he's got good advice. I put the email out there from what Lionel said, which was very interesting. But and then on the solstice, on the 21st of December, do your little ceremony, and then so that it's not private, and we can all share in it and enjoy whatever you did, then the next day, just post a video. You don't have to post your face or anything, just so we can enjoy. You don't have to go to much trouble, just small as you like or big as you like, but and then just post it so we can all share it. The point is that you can't really do this thing in a Zoom call. You want to do this kind of thing in personally, but that's not available to us anymore. So we're doing an exploration of, can you do a kind of ritual like this on your own and then share it afterwards? And that's what I'm hoping, is because I'm experimenting with what you can do on the internet, and
I disagree with you there. I think it could. I'm not saying that I particularly want to do it that way, but I think it could be done as a group. I don't think distance has got anything to do with the kind of energies you're dealing with. I'll give you an example of mine. Just happened to me earlier this year, where I injured my back, and I went to a lady who does. It's called bone therapy. It's just a very gentle thing. It was about all I felt I could tolerate. I basically went just because it was just not going to be an ordeal. And I'd only been twice when the lockdowns came, and I couldn't go back again. And this lady seemed to be fairly, like open-minded to me. So I rang her up and I said, "Hey, how about I just lie on my bed and you go over to the table where I would have been if I'd seen you, and we just do it over the telephone." And I would say that the effect of that, which we did it about another 3 times, was actually stronger than being there in person. In other words, the subtle energies are not interested in distance or physicality. It's got nothing to do with it. And it's just leading me down this path of wondering whether doing this sigil thing could be done with us all together on a call, where we're simply connecting in with it, and maybe Lionel is the kind of whatever you want to call it. He's guiding the thing and moving from one section to the other, and we're all just focusing on connecting with each other and focusing into the sigil and letting Lionel lead it and guide the energies and work it that way. I mean, we could do that as well.
So I'm trying to do something more ambitious. So what I'm really riffing off something that I did in my cult when I was younger, in the cult that I was in. So that was pre-internet. And so the important thing was we had people all over the world, and so the important thing to do, we had these kind of things. And then what the important thing is to get the exact same time so that everybody knows that everybody's doing the same thing at exactly the same minute. And so that's why it's post the time of the solstice. You must get the exact time right to the minute. So if you get the exact time and the exact thing, then it's very powerful. Everybody knows that around the world, they know what everybody's doing. Then you get, I won't ruin it by spoilers, but enough to say that, you get enough synchronicity and enough things coming out of it, strange things coming out of it, that you can definitely see the power of it. And I also thought it was more powerful than actually being on a call. So there's that, and there's also the thing that I'd like to see. The internet's going to go away one day, and I'd like to see what we can accomplish without the crutch of actually being on a Zoom call. You see, you see, you can communicate around the world pretty easily on the intersubjectivity synchronicity telephone. We using the internet for this, but if we get this a little more advanced, you can without the digital crutch, it's more powerful. So this is our first attempt to just see if it can go. I think it's really nice to share it afterwards, because that's something we couldn't do back in the day. And so we would compare notes afterwards, and that was an important part of, it's not retro causality or anything, but that was part of the effect. So there definitely has to be a retrospective afterwards. But it seems so cool because a lot of people want to remain anonymous. And I think that's a good thing. It's not necessary you show your face on this. And there are a lot of lurkers. And
I think another thing is
share. Basically gives the lurkers some time to, gives them an opportunity to participate and share without showing their face, which is also something we couldn't do back in the day.
I think the other thing there too is a lot of people who do that kind of thing, they're probably very accustomed to doing it alone, and just kind of scatter their energies trying to do it. If they had to sit there and set the camera up in front of them or something like that, it would be distracting. It's going to vary with the individual. Some people can maintain their focus, it wouldn't worry them, and others would kind of just be distracted.
That's the kind of experiment. Is what can we do in terms of digital things? It's like you see that it's a very it's very powerful if we can get it to work. You see, you have to imagine things like they're going to use the internet strategically. So the internet is military technology. It was developed by DARPA. It's just like the highway system. They let you use it as a civilian, just as a courtesy, so in peacetime. But our use of the internet now is a peacetime courtesy on wartime technology. So the same as the highway system. If you go back to Eisenhower and have a look, they weren't really even coy about it. They actually said that it was, done for the civilian population to get around, but it's really so that the military can get from, for security reasons, can get from one side of the states to the other. The internet's the same. And so basically you are allowed to use it in peacetime, but it's, already it's being shaped horrendously. It's been balkanized, and you can see as soon as every tin pot dictatorship now, as soon as there's trouble, they shut down social media, they shut down the internet and stuff. It's becoming routine, and liberal democracy has gone the way of the horse and cart. So we're already seeing, the first signs of cancellation, censorship, shaping, intrusion, surveillance, and also impersonation. Right? That's getting kind of big. But the time you're on, they'll use it for propaganda and deep fakes, and then when the shit hits the fan, that you can see them underreporting all the riots, and the opposition that you're seeing around the world is completely underreporting it. And so, at some stage, they're going to switch the internet off strategically now and again. They're going to use the DNS service to redirect people. So we're seeing the twilight of a free internet, and as free as it ever was. But we should hone our skills a little bit for the new world where we don't have to rely on it, or you can rely on it intermittently to, and then know that we have other avenues that are outside the internet to actually communicate.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of getting tuned into that. I mean, maybe that's something that we actually need to focus time on, to become accustomed to using the internet of the the intersubjectivity internet, if you like, to be able to use that with more awareness and more certainty, instead of just experiencing it as an occasional synchronicity and thinking, oh, that's interesting. But start to be tuned in enough that you're confident that somebody else has picked up on what you've just been running through your brain.
No. It's automatic. There's no doubt there. So as, you see, as the
but I think it's a problem of people's confidence and really they're whether they're really with it, or whether they just think it's a curiosity.
No, I don't think that's an issue, because they wouldn't even notice it, because as the egregore develops and people's thinking gets aligned, you can see the touch, just anything. So it's like it happened with like the hobos in any subculture. The hobos started. There's a whole lexicon of glyphs
Symbols,
and markers, symbols that the hobos used, and it's like all developed. The hobos never went like, they never sat down and said, can we make a system that does this, that explains, all this complicated symbology? It's like, it just developed. It's not like magic. You put a little symbol on a post and they go, aha. And everybody knew it. It just spread like, and it works the same way with this, is that eventually people get that you get the signature is, aha, only an Extinctionati member would do that. And so you know that it's automatically identifiable. And it's utterly beyond the state, because for a guy to actually get there, they have to be so dyed in the wool in the subculture that they are essentially of it anyway.
You don't think that the time we're living, you see, if you go back to that, for instance, that hobo culture that you're talking about, my feeling, I guess my only comment there is, I think you were talking about what was psychically a vastly less cluttered place. I mean, I think the kind of world we're living in now is like the equivalent of being stuck in a fucking screaming football stadium somewhere, in terms of the amount of trash and clutter and general pollution of psychic space, of every space for that matter.
Well, this is very important. Okay, so yeah, this keeps me up at night, and this in essence, when I say in 2018, where I realized that, I got on social media and realized these people are not savable, is the signal to noise ratio is just fucking extreme. The noise out there is almost impossible. The psychic noise. See, that's why I kind of came down a little bit. Sorry, Sophie, on discussing with Petra about sociology. That's the noise. That's the kind of bullshit noise that sounds like it's interesting and stuff, but it's noise. It's like there's no upside to talking psychology and to about a psychologist. And what do you think? It's like they're just going to add to the noise and degrade the signal. There's nothing that psychology can offer us anymore. It's done. Psychology is science. You can pick over the bones, but psychology is done as a discipline. Yeah, it'll work a bit as therapy, but anybody knows how to do mutual therapy and support. I mean, they're doing it on the Collapse Reddit, and we must definitely support each other mutually. But as a professional, it's not open as an avenue. You'll lose your license doing that kind of shit. It's subversive. So, a psychologist is like unfortunate. But anyway, that's the thing is that this noise is so loud. Now, if you go back and see in the videos that I did, particularly about the Paul Shannon, the ones about the Darwin things, about, I think, in the way to see evolution and the processes of evolution are far more to do with signaling. If you look at animals and you spend any time looking at the fish and the seagulls like I do, you try and figure out what the fuck they're doing when they're talking to each other and stuff. Look at seagulls in particular. They generally say, after a while, you can see what they're doing, a hell of a lot of communicating, a hell of a lot of noise. The vast majority of the thing is what a seagull is saying is like, get off my patch, get off my patch. It's like, this is mine, fuck off. And then the other bird passing by will go, shut up. But that's what they all do. They're just saying, get out of my yard. And you can see them. You can see pairs of them. They have a little nest or a little bit of territory. And they'll switch. One comes down, they switch, and then they'll also like, get off my patch, get off my patch, to any other bird that comes close. And you can see them all doing that. And the fish and stuff, you can also see if they do signal that way. But the vast majority of this thing is signaling, and the signaling is either to disperse or aggregate things. So it's either diffusion or clustering, and that's the primary process that's going on. But it's you don't get down to tooth and claw. Darwin, it's not as gross as Darwin thought. The vast majority of the thing is done through signaling. There's sexual things from mates, and they're all done for these vast amounts of communication going on in the animal kingdom. Virtually
so
unknown.
what you're saying is that we've got this actually built in. We just have to kind of rediscover it for ourselves.
Well, it's more than just built in. It goes down into the fabric of the prima mater. In that thing, I give you some hints about how to get signal through the noise. And so it's a kind of a dance. It's the reason why you get, sexual organs become more and more complex over time. So if you have an attractor, like say the female is the attractor, then the males can find the female with mutual signaling, right? So the female acts as a cluster point or focal point of attraction. Now, as the number of males increases, so if I get, it's the same thing I was talking about with AI. So if I go da 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 da, you can complete that. So if you know that the next thing that comes in that sequence is da 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 da. So if I do da 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 as a prompt and you do da da, then we automatically know, okay, we've got the same algorithm. Right? Now, if other people get that algorithm, it gets noisy again. They come with their bullshit, and other people do an imitation of that. So if the original bird then has to develop the signal, a bit like dueling banjos. It has to be some kind of innovation on the theme. And then, the attractor can say, pick that out and reinforce that. But they're in this kind of, the dog whistle. So the writer's doing it with dog whistles and stuff. And with, the Let's Go Brandon stuff. They signal. Oh, Sophie, don't remember the. Oh, so there you see this thing is the wing has these memes that so let's go Brandon is like a code for fuck Joe Biden. But you see the right got into it through NASCAR and stuff that is only right wing. And then they used it far and wide because all the left-wing liberals didn't know what they were saying until, it took a while before the left wing catches up and then knows that let's go Brandon is code for fuck Joe Biden. And then when they cracked the signal, then of course the signal's polluted and pilots on Southwest are being fired for saying let's go Brandon and stuff. And but you can always then have a derivation on let's go Brandon, one step ahead of the left, and they have to catch up again. So in the meantime, you're strengthening this core group that now knows this richer and richer language of communication. So as it gets more complex, it gets harder to penetrate. You can't recruit so easily into the egregore, but the egregore is getting tighter and tighter based on this kind of communication. So what I'm doing with this is the first thing in ... So we'll give a little try with the sigil and see how it goes, and then learn from it. And because you also want to use new media. So the digital thing and stuff is new media for us to do it. We don't want to rely on it, but we want to be able to use it. So I hope that makes sense. But we evolve our own egregore mindset exactly the way evolution does a speciation of it. God, you learn a lot on this.
I know, it's a very interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, because I was kind of just stuck. I didn't have an alternative way of looking at it, of thinking about it. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah.
Anyway,
I think we're already sort of get connected up. I was thinking just like last week, I think was it, when Joe and I were going to have a telephone conversation, and it was sort of within a few seconds of me having thought about that, there will be a text message show up. And you think to yourself, and it just didn't happen once. I think it happened 2 or 3 times, enough to be quite certain that there was more going on than just what meets the eye. And you get those intimations of connections already forming, which is very interesting.
Yeah, there is the phenomenon. So Rupert Sheldrake and that is not completely up the garden path with all the stuff, like I look back to see if you look back to see if you look back to see if you were looking at me. That kind of thing is, it's people. There is a telepathy out there. So, you're never going to convince Michael Shermer of it. But the reason is, a lot of the stuff has to do with, it's a catch-22. It has to do with how much you believe and how much you're open to. So Michael Shermer, it will never, Randy, whatever his name is, debunk these spiritualists and stuff like that. Those guys are correct. In their world, it does not exist and it cannot exist. But they never get the obvious. That it doesn't, although they're told it often, is that it doesn't exist because the cop in them is precluding them from it. So they will never get in the circles or be exposed to the information or experiences that allow them to do it because they're closed-minded. If they opened up their mind a little bit, they would soon get into territory where they went, what the fuck? How did that happen? And all their little rationalizations and, all the little statistical analysis and stuff would break down. And then they're onto something. But they can't get there because they actively avoid it. They will actively avoid those situations. And if they see something that goes totally contrary to their rationalism, the cop will immediately step in. And basically they will run, in effect. So those people are not, it's not. So you have to open up your mind enough to then do this, and when you do, then the opposite problem is you get gaslit. See, people might not realize how comfortable they are in their rationalism. When their rationalism gets broken by an incident or two, and they can be doozies, I mean, scary as fuck. So when that happens, then they panic and they run, and then Lord Hugh's the most evil person on the planet. So open-minded person, people go that way. But yeah, the rationalists are too frozen. The other guys are too chicken. But somewhere between them,
I think that the rationalists, in a way, the rationalists are kind of experientially impoverished. If they just had a little bit of something like that appear in their lives, it would move them quite a bit.
well, you see, what you should expect to happen in the kind of, as we head towards collapse and the flippening, what you should see happen is more and more subgroups, sects, and cults, and that will discover this on their own. And so, from the Michael Shermer point of view, it looks like the world's going crazy. So you see more and more groups that look like conspiracy theorists, QAnon, guys that are just batshit crazy. And they will write, Shermers will write long laments about the end of the Enlightenment and end of rationalism, and all the violins will be playing. But you see, more and more people will discover irrationalism on their own and the fact that it can communicate. Now, here's the thing: it gets amplified exponentially with the number of people involved. It's one of the reasons why I think we should start, evangelizing and getting more exposure for the flipping and the digital and the extinctionati, because it's, as you see, you can, if good practitioners of this can use people, especially open-minded people, they can use their telepathy to enhance an effect. So in other words, you get somebody that's open-minded to the whole concept and not too rational, and then you can prime them, and then show them something that you as the practitioner couldn't actually do, like Jedi mind tricks that you couldn't actually do on your own. But you can yoke them by priming them and leading them in and saying, this is what I'm going to show you, and then you can show them something which you couldn't do on your own. So in other words, a practitioner can harness other people's psychic energy. Sorry to say the new agey expression, but you see, people will find that on their own as these cult leaders and guys, different egregores, sects, and cults start. End time apocalyptic cults start. John Bandel comes to mind. All of these people, they will independently start to find all of this stuff and start to find their power. So not only will the world fragment, but those groups will become more powerful and more of a shock to the rationalists. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. Yeah.
It's more. It might be better to describe it as more like what would be the term? Not irrational,
well, they'll call
like
it a collective illusion. They'll call it a collective illusion, and you see, they grow.
No. I just mean distinguishing with the rational world, but not by being irrational, but being in a way hyper or beyond rationality. You're still using it, but you're also gone beyond it at the same time. You haven't just become totally irrational. You're simply entertaining what rationality has traditionally excluded.
Yeah, you must never lose rationality. But see, what's permitted within rationality is infinite, and Michael Shermers think it's finite and closed. So the idea, you see, every time somebody like Gil Cantor or something, or Gödel or one of these guys demonstrates using the tools of rationality, the unlimited nature of rationality, or conversely, its inconsistency or incompleteness. then all the rationalists lose their minds. Oh, unfortunately, they don't lose their minds. They try and hang on to their minds. But they lose their shit because they want the world to be closed, predictable, finite, controllable. And if you go far enough down the path of rationality, you get to quantum theory and Gödel incompleteness and Cantor's infinities, and improve. Using the rational methods that were supposed to be the instruments of control, you prove that everything is uncontrollable, infinite. And so, yeah, they're heading for a bruising. All the rationalists are heading for a bruising, and now is the time of the bruising. The apocalypse is the big bruising. It's the revelation.
So I'm going to have to disagree a little bit there. I think that for the rationalists that are properly scientifically minded, their certainty is what's anathema to them. So if there's anything that is like part of the reason why it's okay for a scientific rationalist to have Gödel and these things just smash the foundations is because ultimately those foundations were based on faith, that rationalization would be a total thing that would cover the entire universe and everything that it could touch. And it's clearly that's not the case due to these geniuses that broke through that wall. However, that's not a surprise. It's about humility in the face of truth. And where I am very scared of is we're talking a lot about things where we're reintroducing faith once rationality dies, where we're talking about, okay, we have telepathy now and we have these superpowers that, just because rationality breaks down does not imply, that there's evidence for things for faith. Like you should be open-minded, but never certain and never like hopeful that things are going to come the way that you want them to. And I think that's where I'm like, I'm feeling uncomfortable in these discussions, is that we're starting to admit things that we don't have evidence for, and that we that are like comfortable or comforting, and in the face of what might be just true. Like, I'm okay with the reality being incredibly broken, right? But I don't want to try to fix it by pretending.
Yeah, though that's why I say you should never let go of rationality. So if you feel that it needs empirical truth and evidence and demonstration, then yeah, we must pursue that and make sure that we have that. I hope we're not getting to the point where we're deluding ourselves. So you must stay on solid ground, and yeah, if that's a danger. You see, what these guys are really trying to do is they want completeness. They want to be able to close the book. They are really seeking their own death, and so they don't want science to be infinite. They want it to be, a theory of everything and a nice equation that it explains everything and stuff. And they want to close the book on inquiry and the book on life. You can't, if you go down this route, you can't go very far where you just get subjective evidence. All evidence is really subjective. But if you do some of this rule stuff and you get something you can't explain, I know, Ryan, you're resistant to acid trips and stuff like that, and that's a good thing, because I saw somebody talking about psilocybin and stuff on the things. Don't take the drugs; they'll hold you back. But you will get the effects naturally if you pursue this long enough and hard enough. You will get the effects. Now you've got a problem there, because you know something that's absolutely, you've seen with your own eyes. It's more real than anything somebody could show you on the lab bench. So, but you're stuck now. You can't go back and confer with the collective and say, the subjective truth, how does it fit in the collective truth? And it says it has no place. You say, but I know it's more truth than even you. So in other words, it's like I'm dreaming you and all your evidence in a dream. I woke up and saw what the truth is. What I do with that? first of all,
all our
out of
all
the
our
dream,
evidence.
it's not permitted. And the other thing is, you can't catch this beast by the tail. You can't have your cake and eat it. At some stage, you have to let go, because the evidence itself will always be subjective. You will never be able to be absolutely certain that you didn't dream your result. So that, and the important thing is that what a big kind of conceit of these guys that think that they're open-minded and of the Enlightenment ideal. And my dad was always one of these guys who think, you must always be open-minded and thought of everything as infinite, and kind of a good liberal academic. But the problem about that is they refuse their axioms. So all of these things are axiomatic, and they start, this whole edifice that they build, the entire idea of science that we have, and mathematics for that matter, is built on axioms. Now, the axioms are the price of entry into this world, but then they refuse the axioms or forget them. So our whole science is based on, the cosmological constant. It's like roughly 1/137. But now, if you look at everything, say, what is an atom? What is this and that? What is an electron? You say they're all described in terms of other things, in terms of other standard constants. So, you go on Wikipedia, you'll go on a little circle if you're trying to explain what is a tachyon, and it's always explained in terms of some other scalar quantities, or in terms of other measurements. And so when you finally get back to it, it's all closed and hangs in the air. It's all just circular. So we don't actually know anything other than the self-referential circle that hangs in the air. And then where it gets grounded, you say, well, what's the absolute relationship of all these things? And it turns out to be, just constant, 1/137. So everybody said, well, why is it 1/137? As if it's going to, as if they can leap outside their closed hermeneutic circle with this bit of information. And you say you can't. That 137 is where you get to when you make this closed circle. It started on the axiom of Baconian kind of empiricism.
Well, that brings to mind
at the end of Baconian empiricism, and you're looking over the edge of the cliff into no man's land. And you say, you're saying, well, we're on the edge of a continent looking into no man's land, saying, no, you've forgotten. Look behind you. You're on an island.
But that's what brings to mind what somebody, I think it's you, that posted the last interview of Ian McGilchrist on his last book, The Matter of Things. And at some stage in the interview, he comes to this point about scientifical rationality and experiments and looking at results and then drawing conclusions from different experiments. And he says it's at that stage that the instinct comes in, that there is at one stage you pick something based on your instinct. At the end, the biggest discoveries, the biggest experiments had to be concluded by a choice that was coming from your instinct. I don't know if you listen to that, but it makes me think of what you say. You can't exclude that from rationality. It's impossible.
I think that's true in general with high-level mathematics and physics, is that the papers that get published are often like translating the initial insights from the instinct or the imagination that people are imagining four-dimensional things spinning in their head or whatever, and that's not in the paper, right? But that's where the actual insights come from, and it's merely just a way of communicating your insights to the rest of people in a way that they've required for your career, and it's a difficult thing to communicate. And I think that that intuition and insight, it's easy to fool ourselves and think it comes from a divine place, like from a deity or from an outside force, when really it does come from our minds. We are social animals. We can interpret the feelings of our dead ancestors and things like that because we knew them and they're a part of us. And you don't have to cross over into a dualistic world to get those kinds of effects. It's just that our alien cortex thinks that it's total and understands everything. And if there's a source of thought that doesn't come from it, then it determines that that's some kind of a supernatural thing. But that's just not true. Our brain is much larger than our alien cortex gives it credit.
Yeah, so our brain is actually the universe. So we the lie of the alien cortex is it's a fragment of the universe that claims to be a whole. So the duality is wrong. There's no God out there. The God is our mind. The God you're looking for is your own mind, and your own mind is not between your left and right ear. It's in the world you're walking around in. So when you walk down the street, you know, that's that virtual reality. The machine that's creating the virtual reality of you walking down the street is your own mind. Now, as soon as you say that, everybody says, my brain is 70 billion neurons, and it's not creating the experience. So there is some feet going down the pavement and saying, no, there isn't. Your brain is not that 70 billion neurons. It's the street and the feet. Another way of saying it is you know, like the Large Hadron Collider. The guys are seeing all these fucking fakes in the Large Hadron Collider. They you know, come up with all the particles, and then they find the Higgs boson. That's all a bit of a joke. But you know, to punch through it, you have to say, like, you say, it's in the detector, stupid. It's like you're saying, like, what did you discover? Say, oh, we found this little tachyon, and it did this little track, and had this kind of energy and stuff. And say, what did you detect it with? And they never describe the detector. And you say, if you look at the detector, that'll describe the results. So they think that they're creating these particles with high energy, and then they're detecting them in the thing. Saying, no, it's the detection that's creating them, not the fucking acceleration and high energy particles. You see, the reality comes into, I mean, they know it from quantum theory. The reality comes into existence by the detection. It's the observer. In this case, the observer is the instruments in the Hadron Collider, all the large experiments that detect all these effects. They are not unraveling the universe. They're basically detecting an aspect of it that's predetermined by the detector. Go and get another detector, you'll get a different result. And you go and get another interpreter, you'll get a different result. And if you don't believe me, you can do an empirical experiment. Go and feed them some crap data which came from some other source, like, you know, some guy's welding torch or atmospheric noise or something, and you'll see that they'll be able to prove supersymmetry or find some fucking theory of everything out of it. But nobody does double-blind tests because we stopped doing science. They don't do science at the Large Hadron Collider, by the way. It's bullshit. Nothing's falsifiable. They never do double-blind tests. They never expose all the data that we spent 4 billion, you know, euros on. It's like they don't share that. They don't let you at it. You're not allowed to see it, because as soon as people pick over their data, they'll show that it's all statistical clumping. It's all bullshit left and right. It's all a hoax.
Hugh, is it perhaps more helpful to think of the fact that all we can know is our experience, and so in that sense, we're always going to be trapped in a subjective realm, and that what we've actually done with science. Oh, go on.
Not quite. Not quite.
Not
Because
quite.
Ryan is right. You can't leave behind rationality. You see that presupposes
No, I'm not saying that.
And random, and you can't understand it. But it's lawful.
The rationale.
It's lawful.
The rationale.
So it's lawful all the way down. So that's the thing that we can't get our head around in the Western world. If something is lawful but unpredictable, we just cannot get our head around that.
No, what I think what I was trying to say was that it is like, for instance, with science, what we're doing is doing this little trick where we externalize the experience, and so the science is considered to be this very objective, rational thing, because we put it outside of what we experience. We can't experience the only way we can know the science is by our experience. So the whole thing is our experience. And given that that's the case, then you can manipulate science rationally, or look at it, examine it rationally, I mean. But that also means that you can rationally use and deal with things that science currently excludes, such as what we were talking
Well,
about
that,
earlier.
It's difficult. Go ahead, Ryan.
the tricky thing there is that yourself is the easiest person to fool. Like it's so easy to fool ourselves, and when you externalize your results, with the scientific method, you're getting peer review or something like that. It has to be in a form, like I discussed earlier, where it's interpretable by colleagues, and there's an inherent bias due to that can shape the path of science, but it's a trade-off because there are so many ways that we can fool ourselves that just relying on solipsism alone to say that whatever I experience is ground truth is like I've been so wrong so many times about what I've experienced that that it's given me a humility now that I'm not certain about what's going on. But the same thing is just because science does not. First of all, a lot of the things that people claim science does not reach into, like some of the New Age stuff, science has reached into and disproven. And it's like where you can do these double-blind experiments and show that telepathy isn't happening, for example. And so the only way that you retain those beliefs is if you make some excuses for why they have to be true, and then you're not being open-minded to what the truth is coming in with. It's you're trying to hang on through faith for what you want to be true instead. So this is what just a personal experience of mine is. I was in earlier in my life, I was really into like auras and past lives and crystals and meditation and all these things. And I was right there with you, Hugh, saying that this experience, the subjective experience of like energy and things, that is more real to me than this table. And I was certain of that, and I had very deep emotional, like spiritual experiences where I felt those chemicals in my head that you're saying don't take drugs for, but in the path of doing those things, I became under the influence of some folks that would sneak in other claims. And I mean, those claims themselves were dubious, but the other claims were like that, you should that your stomach acid is made of potassium, for example. And it's like eventually I realized that that's just objectively false, and yet I couldn't detect it because I became so suggestible. I left behind my my skepticism and became suggestible and became easily influenced. And I think that's where I'm worried about, is that's a psychopath's dream right there, is when you get suggestible people. And I don't want us to be those people.
Yes. So absolutely, yeah, 100%. You should never let go of your skepticism and never get into pseudoscience. And I say often you should be your own guru. It's like there's a problem for me, and the more I say you should be your own guru, you get the Life of Brian effect, where people say only the true guru would say take off the mantle and say be your own guru, and you're like, oh fuck. But but yeah, so my task is to remind everybody of what you just said, right? Now, the problem is about the subjective thing is like the pseudoscience and paranormal psychology, in that they've set up a lot of experiments that they're mixing and matching in a way that's not legit in pseudoscience. They look at the paranormal experiences, and then they try and use statistics and stuff and to show that. So there's bullshit out there. There's a lot of the stuff about paranormal stuff is bullshit, and you're right to avoid it. But it's not absolute. You see, it's very easy at that point to go too far, because there is some real shit that that you will immediately Michael Shermer your way out of being able to see if you suddenly then throw the baby out with the bathwater. So
for example, plate tectonics. Plate tectonics was seen as absolutely insane when it first came out, but with enough input, it made sense.
Yeah, so the way it works in general is that if you take a broad subject like, okay, let's take plate tectonics, is it starts off being complete rubbish. It's like the flippening is going to get this treatment if it becomes more widely known. It's the Gandhi thing. Is like first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then the fucking earth flips. But in general, the way these things go is that you get this kind of flood you get, say, like the plate tectonics. Use that example. Is first it's ridiculous, then everybody suddenly realizes that it's probably true, and then eventually they start measuring it, and then then it becomes established fact. Then you're onto the new conservatancy there, and then it's not really open to some other things that like Hapgood things about why the crust deformed and stuff because it moved over an oblate spheroid, Earth crust displacement and stuff, was not right. But you see, what I'm trying to say is once you get to the new boundary of the established, then things fall apart. You're seeing that in science in general. And then it's wrong to reject the woo-woo stuff, because you get to a point where the irresistible force meets the immovable object, and it's out of those, it's in the fine dependence between those that the next bit of truth is synthesized out of, or the next insight into truth. So another way of saying this is, imagine nobody's heard about Paris. Then Marco Polo comes back from Paris and says, there's a place called Paris. Everybody says, bullshit. Eventually, they send people to investigate, and they say, no, there is a place called Paris. Eventually, it becomes established that, yeah, Paris is a real thing. Now they start studying Paris, and they send hundreds of agents to go and investigate Paris and report back. That's the golden age, where people say, yeah, more and more people find, the Champs-Élysées and the Eiffel Tower and Montmartre and stuff, and they come back reporting it, and it's reproducible. Other people go and investigate, and they come back. And then that's the golden age, where everybody deludes themselves that now we understand Paris. As you go and send more and more agents to delve deeper and deeper into the details of the Eiffel Tower, Montmartre, and all of these details of Paris, then their subjectivity comes back. They come back in more and more contradictory reports of exactly what the Eiffel Tower is, how you look at it. Eventually, everything looks subjective, and you get a crisis of reproducibility, which is exactly where science is today. So we've gone from the Baconian method to this golden age of apparent certainty. And now nobody can reproduce, as we get into the nitty-gritty, nobody can reproduce anybody else's results. And vast fields of science, from the Large Hadron Collider to pseudoscience like psychology. And the reason is because we're getting now into the fine details of a fractal system. So the fractal nature is starting to basically appear. And now subjective experience is very important. If you go into Montmartre, it depends on who you meet, who you ask, exactly what part of Paris you went to. You can have, you have a limited human lifespan where you can go as an agent to Paris, wander around it, and then report back. It's going to be very different now. Although you agree on the general layout of Paris and that there is a Paris and stuff, what Paris is and the general details and stuff get, again, dissolved in this complexity of subjective experience. And that's where we are at. We are at one of those turning points in the world. So I hope that clarifies a little bit about woo-woo.
Well, I think it does clarify, but you. So there's a point in a transition between two different plateaus of realization, where you need to be temporarily inconsistent as you get to the new one, right? You're doing a little upgrade of your thinking, and you're going to have some contradictions along the way, and that's okay, especially if they're creative contradictions that help you push your thinking deeper into exploring them. However, you don't just get to smuggle in the woo-woo stuff because it has to hold to the same standards, at least in terms of falsifiability and being able to be, I guess, not like if it's already been disproven in many ways. Like, you don't get to hold on to it as a security blanket because it makes you comfortable, right? You have to face reality, and that's where you can't smuggle it. You can't be so open-minded that your brain falls out, right? So those are things that it's okay to explore. Like, maybe there are microtubule things for quantum effects in consciousness or intelligence. Like, that we could figure out, are there experiments that we could run that could make us wrong about that? But if we just say it doesn't matter what would make us wrong, we're going to believe it, that's where we've lost our minds. That's where our brain fell out.
Okay, now you got to be cautious here, because you can't be methodical and get to the goal. So you can't. I understand your need for some kind of guardrails and some kind of defense, and that's legit. The thing is that we're under the clock, we're under the gun. The human lifespan is only just so long, and you can only absorb so much of what other people have done before you. So you can stand on the shoulders of giants, but the giants are crumbling. We're losing touch with the knowledge from the past. So they can only serve you so much. We're not actually accumulating knowledge like people think, like, we're building knowledge on the internet or the Library of Congress. That's not true. The Library of Congress is becoming a big pool of entropy that's completely indexable, and we can't even interpret what previous authors as far back as Shakespeare. We barely have 50% of the comprehension of him that we had, say, even 20 years ago. So we're losing information that people think has been nailed down. So it's more like a moving light or something moving along in a train. It's more like a conversation than it is actually an accumulation of certainty. So you need to break the mold to move on. But you're absolutely right. You need to be ruthless in terms of pursuing reality. What we're after is the truth, and absolutely no time for the truth. But God is that will close off the truth. You see, the solipsistic thing about paranormal stuff is, if you test paranormal stuff, is you will exclude it and get the Michael Shermer result merely because you have prejudice and you want to see a result without knowing it. So you have to guard against your own guard. So as things go, it becomes a question of getting to this leap. You see, it's kind of like Watson and Crick. So Watson and Crick made a leap of imagination to get to the structure of the DNA molecule. They were right, but in the background you've got Rosalind Carter, who's super cautious. And now all the feminists whinge because they say, well, why did those guys got Nobel Prizes? Because they're men, and Rosalind Carter did all the hard work and was the proper scientist and doesn't get anything. Well, she's right not to get anything, because she very likely would never have discovered the structure of DNA going down the methodical path she was going down. So you can accumulate evidence and evidence and evidence and evidence and never put it together. And that's largely what's happening in science today. There's over 2 million papers are published. It's too much information for anybody to drink from that fire hose. There's nobody left to put it together. So you're making a big mistake saying you can be methodical and guard against all the woo-woo stuff say, well, you've got to make a leap of faith too. You've got to do a snap judgment on woo-woo and stuff that's real. So this is not an easy game at all. But I'm saying, if you see the Rosalind Carter way, the clock will run out on you. What's going on is you're really trying to leap over your alien cortex, and your alien cortex is limited view. It's a fragment of the universe, of this. Kind of in a way, it's kind of a degraded fractal picture or holographic picture of a bigger hologram. And so for the degraded holographic picture, to see the bigger hologram is a kind of a thing of kind of empathy and self-reference. You can basically say that this degraded image of this infinite hologram, you can see it and know it. And that's really what you want to get to. Now, in the meantime, the alien cortex, which is our small mirror, our little tube that we're looking at the universe through, is desperately trying to not disappear. It's trying to hold itself together with, self-referential, basically self-support. So it's trying to prevent you, in other words, reaching this point of enlightenment. And the biggest thing it has on its side is the clock. We only have a certain amount of time and energy to come to this epiphany. And so it does everything it can to run out the clock. And a lot of these things are strategies to run out the clock. The Bible is a strategy to run out the clock. Because if you get stuck in any one of these things, the woo-woo thing, the New Age thing, the Bible thing, the belief thing, or the science thing, you will find that it's a quagmire. And you will end your career as, you'll get your laurels, maybe. You'll be like Higgs, and you'll die very happy with a bit of gold in your pocket, a medal. But you won't have actually got the real prize, which is what they were after, and that's understanding. So time after time, these guys, especially the great ones, they fall short of the mark. And you can actually see in their careers where they do it. You can see as far as they got. And in essence, they kind of then reach their peak, and they sell out and take the gold and stuff and just say that's as far up the peak that I got. But very few people will shut the fuck up and not take any of the gold and not be distracted and push on to the peak. Those are very, very few.
Isn't it also fair to say that even at the beginning of a lot of scientific enterprise, you begin with the woo-woo, because you're imagining maybe some situation and then trying to demonstrate that might be so, that legend of Einstein imagining that he was, what would it be like if I was riding on a beam of light? If that's what actually happened, if that's what he did imagine, then you can see he's just starting from a place of his own subjective ramblings. He's not starting from any hard rational place. And then, of course, he's invoking his scientific mathematical apparatus after that. But his beginning point was not a objective, verifiable, concrete thing originally.
Yeah, so I think Einstein was a fraud. Einstein was a front for, I can't remember her name, but basically.
I'm just using that as an example. I don't know. I'm just saying that as an example, of beginning with.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, you're kind of right. But Einstein was just channeling this way better physicist, and I can't remember her name, but she eventually went to Russia and I think died in a pogrom. But Einstein never did anything after he cut off his relationship with her. So she was clearly the source of all the shit he came up with. But the thing is, so she's kind of like the element of chaos. That without that element of chaos, Einstein was just too much of a plodder and too close-minded to do any more contributions. So the thing, what you're talking about there, and the woo-woo stuff is, see it as the devil is often credited with having two magic powers. The two magic powers are the power of dissolution and coagulation. So the woo-woo stuff is a very good tool. It's a kind of acid of dissociation. So it's basically it can stop all the rigid thinking. It's kind of like LSD that can get people out of a rut, including science and scientists, but and people like Einstein. So Einstein had his LSD in this other woman, which, damn it, she's called Sabine. I can't remember. That or Sabina, but anyway, I wish I could remember. Anyway, she was the dissolving acid that was the chaos that worked well with Einstein's coagulation impetus. So the two of them achieved a lot, and you will, because they're doing Desiderata Extinctionati, and they're on the razor's edge. So somewhere on the razor's edge between dissolving all these old ideas and coagulating new ones is the art. But you can't. You see, what I'm talking against a lot to Ryan is what I feel is a latent tendency for Ryan to go to this place, which is you can coagulate it and make a correct formula this way. And you say, yes and no. You don't want to go too woo-woo, and you don't want to go too rational.
I think to clarify, I don't think that I have a different meaning for woo-woo than just having I guess kind of a trippy imagination. Like that's not what I would say. I think often there has to be some kind of immune system in the meme that keeps it alive, kind of like the it's a self-propagating system in the Uncle Ted sense. So different, and you could include scientism in that as a self-propagating system, where you are essentially like there's like a set of talking points to why is the establishment not accepting this, and why is there's a whole set of ideas around how to prevent the idea's own death. So that's different than just having an imagination. Like there's no immune system in trying to imagine what riding a beam of light would be like, right? There's no system involved there that's trying to self-propagate. So I think since we are hosts for mimetic spread, that's where we need to have our own awareness about, we're essentially an amalgamation of memes that drive our behavior. We're not independent of them. We don't have our autonomy or free will. Like we're just like whatever we encounter and we kind of mix together, like there's a chance happening that these different ideas will form some unique individuality about us. But there's nothing like inherently self-determination wise in that. So I wanted to differentiate between woo and just having objective experience.
I'm just wondering whether a better way to look at the whole thing is that instead of getting getting in a situation where people feel as though they've got to pick a side, is to stop being totally invested in either of them, the rational scientific or the more subjective realm. Is that both of these realms have got it's like your toolbox for functioning is that you pick the appropriate tool. You don't get invested in it. You don't mistake it for your total capacity to function. And so you use rationality where that's appropriate. You use science. You don't just dismiss. Sorry, I don't mean particularly you, Ryan, using the word you. you don't dismiss the subjective experience as well. But it's kind of like using these things without being there, letting them use you, I guess,
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
this is
guess, go on.
yeah, yeah. I think both of you are absolutely right. So what my plan is to what Ryan was saying was to ground our means and make sure that we know what our means are, because what normally makes things pretty fluid is people misunderstand what other people's memes are, and then you're off to the races in an understanding you just don't have. So I think that's what the manifesto is for. It's a manifesto is to establish what memes we depart on. So those are axioms. So we can actually put them under the microscope and examine them. And I think that's what we should do. In we should nothing should come out of the manifesto that doesn't pass the test of realism or empiricism. There shouldn't be anything
Yeah,
woo-woo. We shouldn't rely on
that's
woo-woo.
that's what I wanted to I was a little bit worried about because just from a psychological standpoint, you all are people that understand what I'm going through right now, right? And if at the end of the manifesto I'm excluded from that, where I feel like I can't be a part of it anymore, like that would be
No, that would be a failure. Yeah, you see, it's not woo woo. We're trying to do woo way. So we have enough you know divergent agreement in this in all the participants to make a very nice heterogeneous group. So we'd fail if we wind up excluding one person out of the egregore. It would be kind of like a net loss for the manifesto and the project itself. So it only works if we can get everybody involved, prepared, involved, and to make sure that they can all sign off on it. Otherwise, it's already partial and on a bad footing. So an important task for you, Ryan, is to keeping us on that path and making sure that we don't go off the rails in that direction. Um, but if we came up with something and then you said like, no, Ryan doesn't sign off on that, I think then we should go back to the drawing board and start over until we can actually get something that everybody's satisfied with. Because for one thing, it won't travel very far. If we're heterogeneous enough in this group that if it doesn't fly with us, it's not going to fly anyway. So, I mean, in general, there's a theory that there are about 20 personality types and stuff. We've got enough people already to actually, cover the board in terms of making sure that we're not partial or partisan or to this or to that.
Yeah, I think one way where I could I've been just kind of turning it over in my head as for how to I guess turn coat against rationality in a way is from Ishmael, the book with the levers and the takers and the idea that the rationality essentially is the scientific method and stuff is a proxy for power that gets usurped by psychopaths for the techno-industrial system. So it's essentially, yes, it does get you truth, but would you rather be an innocuous hunter-gatherer that is able to continue to survive or go extinct? Like those are your options. And I'd like to, if there's a way, to have the have my cake and eat it too, where I can still be, where I can not accept like some of the spiritual beliefs of animism or something like this wholesale, while still being a truth seeker and not causing damage to the earth. So I saw Dune yesterday, and all the Fremen technology is technology which is interfacing with nature. It is making sure that it's not trying to conquer nature. It's trying to live within it in harmony, and they don't need anything but that. Right? And I'm trying to think if there's a way that we can have enough truth to be able to achieve that kind of a goal, without becoming the psychopathic techno-industrial system.
Yeah, so irrationality is also co-opted by psychopaths, so for power. So both rationality and irrationality are co-opted for power. But I think the thing to do is in Shakespeare. It's kind of it's the Merchant of Venice, unfortunately, but is to be a lawyer about it. You see, the devil is in the details. So the way to get it is to not take too much of an absolutist stand. So what I mean is by this is it's very easy to lay down a principle or lay down the law, and you'd say, well, you mustn't lay down the law. Well, no, that's not quite true either. The thing is to do is say you can have your cake and eat it. That is how it must be anyway. Because you want to be able to say yes for now. So in other words, you never closed off to religion or rationalism. You can do religion 1 minute and be completely woo-woo, and that's okay, and be rational the next minute. So I think that's that people don't give themselves enough leeway. Like with religion, I keep on trying to say that you can go to church. You can go to church and pray. You can get all the benefits. But you see, if you pick over and be very rational about what are the benefits, does any benefit come from the pulpit? No. Fuck all comes from the pulpit. In fact, there's just a steady stream of harm. They're just doing all the smells and bells and nice satwa and stuff to get you in there so that they can give you their propaganda. So fuck the guy on the pulpit. As long as you know that he's talking shit, and be prepared to say it to him too. It's like, you are full of shit, Monsignor. And then basically he knows he's full of shit. And you'll see the exorcist leap out of his mouth as soon as you expose him. But doesn't mean you can't go to church and get the smells and bells and the satwa and all the peace and all the communion with a God that doesn't exist. It's like, have it all. Just take that and then basically leave the rest. It's the curate's egg. And then just move on. You see, everybody says, you must be like this with religion. And say, on when? Tuesday? Because I go to church on Wednesday. Fucking take all the psychic energy out of the shit on their church and go. So, am I a Christian? Yeah, I'm a church-going Christian. But you're a fucking devil. Yeah, I'm the devil too. So you can't have it always if you pick and choose very carefully. So
that goes back to what I was. I mean, I think that was what I was trying to hatch, talking about, using the thing, not letting it use you, and remaining, don't get overly invested in the church or whatever the opposite is to the church. You go there.
That's like the Buddha tale of the boat to cross the river, and you leave it once you've crossed the river.
You leave it behind,
you burn yourself carrying the boat afterwards,
Yeah, you don't want to be a complete prick like Thomas Becket or any one of these guys. Like Faulty is doing this. He's going to get nailed to a cross. So basically, you say, like, what's the correct ideology? Is this the correct ideology? Well, it depends. If you fucking nail me to the cross and say, is Jesus the true Christ? I say, yes, he fucking is. And now let me off the cross. And I'll mean it in that moment. 2 seconds later, something
change
different.
Your mind again.
Yeah, you're allowed to change your mind. See, a lot of ways there's people are bad actors in the play. They're given this cue and they respond to yesterday's line. So
well, the other thing is too, you could say there might be something for taking a scientific look at the unscientific things and taking an unscientific look at the scientific things and getting a richer perspective by doing that, instead of keeping this sort of rigid segregation
Yeah. Well, one way we might be able to do that is to recognize we're using a false dichotomy there, where it's not just, once you fall off the scientific rationalist wagon that you fall into an unscientific wagon, like, or a woo wagon or whatever. Like there's plenty of room for other kinds of experiences in there, and we shouldn't just see it as a binary. And in fact, going back to Hugh, your fractal yin yang symbol, I think for the manifesto or whatnot, I'm starting to feel like we need to incorporate some of the mathematical wisdom that we've found in like the Newton's fractal and these kinds of things, where to have your cake and eat it too, you can't have an absolute. You can't say be this way or be that way. We're going to have to include some fractal rules in our manifesto that allows you to, don't follow the rules, but follow these rules and have the solution to that be a fractal instead of
yes. So the way I'm writing the manifesto is there are no rules. So basically what I'm saying is we have the Desiderata Extinctionati. So Desiderata are not rules, they're just desirables. So this is so the most that I would suggest the manifesto says is that it points to, say, well, given this ideology or this belief system or whatever you want to call it, then how do you behave? And you say, well, we think you should behave according to the Desiderata if you want. But that contradiction and fractal nature is written into the Desiderata. If you go into them, you'll see they are contradictory. And so, but we're well aware of that, and deliberately, it's almost like a joke. So a lot of this it's a joke in the end. But
Alan Watts spoke about
but we haven't left the alternate reality game, by the way. We're just moving it along.
I was just thinking that Alan Watts spoke a few times about the need for the opposite or the antithesis to anything, that you wouldn't know what it was or what you had or what you were doing unless it had an obvious side to it. Would you know you were being rational unless you were able to entertain the irrational and had some kind of a feeling for what that is? And a little bit like these rules or desirable things that the desiderata, being contradictory in a way, is, without that contradiction, you'd be less aware of what you had. Everything, it's like you can do a drawing on a page and keep drawing and drawing and drawing, and eventually your drawing will disappear because you've completely covered the page in ink. You actually depended upon having the opposite to the drawing being there. In other words, the blank page or the paper.
You need negative space.
Yeah, so you need, yeah.
There's a danger in casting things in stone, but if you cast something in stone, then it has to be Delphic. So it has to be, at the risk of being impenetrable and ignored, it has to be Delphic. So you if you play the game of writing and putting things in writing, that's totalitarian. It's fundamentally totalitarian, and its aim is to it's propaganda to the reader, and it's trying to control their thought and their mind and ultimately their behavior. There's no other writing that's been done that hasn't had that aim in mind. So you're playing the alien cortex's game. You're in enemy territory just by putting things in, writing them in stone. The free card is that they're Delphic, and they, in the legalistic way, is you still have an escape route out of the logic that you committed to a totalitarian form. If that makes any sense.
Could you explain what Delphic means in this context?
It means that it's cryptic. So I would say it's what I'd call crypto-random. So in other words, something that looks random, but it's not dualistic in terms of a false dichotomy or some kind of dichotomy. It's not dichotomous. It appears to be dichotomous to people with the dichotomous brain, but in essence, it's a mirror. It just reflects what you interrogated with. So if you come with a dichotomous mindset, you will get a dichotomous conclusion out of it, and then you'll be wrong, because Pythia will tell you something that will get you defeated at the river Styx. But and then you'll realize, damn, she's a bitch. But she's not really a bitch. She just laid it out in a thing that has more than one meaning, so that it's nuanced enough that it's not Pythia talking to you, it's you talking to you. So if you get close enough to the truth, you just put down stuff that in essence is so contradictory it's neutral. But that's not random. Now, most people would say, okay, you just put down random junk. No, it's not random junk. That's the key. See, if people look at Jackson Pollock and stuff and they say, he's just putting down random junk, I can do that. Go try. You'll soon find out that he wasn't putting down random junk. So they say, what was he doing? Say, well, the best way to describe that says, like, it's crypto-random. It has structure and meaning. There's form in there. But it's again, it's kind of this fractal infinite form that just won't go in a box. In fact, Jackson Pollock was doing exactly that. He was putting fractal stuff. He did a lot of that stuff drunk. A lot of that art drunk. So the reason why is because he had to get in the fine balance between control and just random. But no, Jackson Pollock was a real artist because he put down on canvas crypto random stuff.
Yeah.
In essence, it always winds up being a mirror. Well, okay, should we? Yeah, go ahead.
Can we go now, sir?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I was going to say this is like, wow, shit, that's a long one. I'm sorry it went on so long. I just couldn't find a place to stop. You can't stop with this kind of shit.
Yeah.
No Chronos here. No Chronos here at all.
Yeah,
So
well, we fucking kicked Kronos in the nuts this time. Okay. So
Yeah. There's one thing. Earlier we talked about the social dilemma. Is that right? I just wanted to provide some context around that. So the suggestions in the social dilemma were that we should tax data and stuff to make it so that it would be bad, and what that would but the consequence of doing that would be that only Google and Facebook would be able to afford those taxes. It would be essentially like supporting the system in itself. So the same reason why the Sherman antitrust amendments and things like that were lobbied by Standard Oil and those companies, because they became more profitable after. So don't believe the propaganda in the social dilemma. The problems are real. The solutions are wrong. It's similar to the cap and trade or something like that. Like it's designed as a solution that reinforces the problem. And
Ryan, you're absolutely right, and I think it goes for a lot of those very talented documentaries on various issues, whether it's climate, politics, social dilemma is there. It's well done. The conclusions, just forget about them.
yeah, check the Hated Ones video on the social dilemma. It's good.
yeah, I was going to say it's just like the carbon tax. It's like
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, it is a bit of a quagmire to get too deep into that, and I say like we should just cut right across the whole argument, the whole mucko, the whole dialogue. Just cut clean across it with the flipping and just say like, nah, clock's run out. Don't worry about the carbon tax. Why? Not enough time. I mean, fuck people over that way. Yeah. All right. Well, let's. You can go on splitting hairs and arguing with these guys and forever. That's a win for the alien cortex. That's what the alien cortex wants you to do. It's trying to get you in the brambles. So okay, so there's a quick way of getting out of the brambles, and that's just to force still. So whenever you feel yourself in the brambles, the way to step back is to just go straight to your senses. The brambles are in your left brain, so it's just the quickest way you can get out of your left brain is to get into your senses. Everything is connected to the world in your senses, so it just sucks the energy out of your left brain and leaves you in reality. So let's just do it. Boom, Paramatma. And you can do that at any time. Just get used to it. But I got to get back in the real world now because the storms are coming in for days and days. It's literally kairos and stuff. So I've got to like set the lines, but I don't think I'll be able to go ashore for days now. There's very big storms and winds coming in, so I'm not going to be able to
We're the
sleep.
same here. We've had 4, 7, 8, and it has blown like hell. It's the season, yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
And they all southerly, guys. This is all climate change. This is not supposed to be happening. And it's probably because Europe is warming up. It's coming from the Sahara, which is a hot place, and it's supposed to be blowing northwest southerlies now, but to northerlies winds, but in winter now, but it's blowing southerly, and I guess it's because the jet stream has moved and the Europe has got warmer, and it's anyway, it's happening. It's happening way faster than the dialogue. So the real world is moving fast now.
Does seem to
All
be.
right.
Okay. Thanks,
Well,
Hugh. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay.